right, I will be checking the feed to make sure it looks like we're live in just a couple seconds here. I do assume that we are currently live. So if you are
I see
seeing
us up.
us,
I see
excellent,
us.
excellent. Let me adjust my microphone here. But yeah, here we are. We're live. My name is Andrew. This is Boston Space, or not Boston Space. This is Solid Rocket Future, covering the most exciting parts of human space flight and rocketry. Here with Andrew Paris, our guest that we had on the last SLS rollout stream. Our good friend Andrew. Welcome back. Welcome back. And
Thanks.
yeah, we're here to watch the Axiom launch today. This is the first fully commercial mission to the ISS. Of course, SpaceX is going to be delivering these astronauts up to orbit today. But yeah, what do you think? Were you excited for this, Andrew?
I'm sorry, I got to turn you down in my ear here. Say again.
No, I'm just saying, are you excited for this thing? You ready?
Oh yes, very excited, very excited. This is another one of those dream type of missions. When that Axiom first announced they were going to doing these kind of things years ago, I was like, where do I sign up? Oh, I need $55 million. Oh, just a second, let me go see if I can find that. All the talk about reality shows giving away seats. This is Axiom is the vehicle they would be going up on. The rumor is that Discovery Channel and Space Hero had seats reserved on Axiom 2 for next year. So this is a big deal for a lot of people. And seeing Mike LA get to fly again, Michael Lopez Alegria, getting to fly in space again after years of technically being retired. He's one of those guys that when I was at NASA he was like all about space. He couldn't get enough of it.
Right. That's great. It's an interesting crew going up. We got kind of diverse crew. This Mark from Canada, and
yeah.
I think we'll hear some introductions and everything on the official live stream here shortly. We'll get audio coming through and everything as well. But yeah, this is good.
There was something I was reading earlier about. Eitan Stibbe, the Israeli astronaut, was good friends with astronaut Ramon from the Columbia flight. So this kind of is. I remember that the Columbia flight with him on it, and with Ramon, and it was a very big deal to the entire country, and there was a lot of writing on it. And so for Eitan to be able to fly in his place, I'm sure is just as important to his home country.
Right. Very cool. Just bear with me for a moment here while I get some audio from the official stream.
Looks like they're getting their greetings from Canada.
And then all the way across the Atlantic from our partners in Madrid, Spain, teams at Motor and Sport Institute are gathering together to celebrate the launch of Commander MLA's fifth flight to space.
Yeah.
And continuing east, our good friends
looking like a beautiful day out there at the Cape. It's cloudy up here in New England, but it looks like a nice day for a launch down there.
Yeah, I heard this read this morning the weather was 90% go, that's a rarity. That's a gift in Central Florida, a 90% go. But like the old joke, if you don't like the weather, wait a minute, it'll change. That Florida's like that.
This mission, seeing everybody that this crew's got to interact with and everything this means to these people here on Earth, it really shows that this is how the dots are connected between what's going on up there and what's going on down here.
Hearing about the kinds of research and outreach that each member has chosen to focus on was particularly interesting to me. They don't have a lot of time up there at all. So to focus on aspects like art really gives, on such a large scale, is really interesting.
Yeah. Not even have to have a huge agenda. I'm sure they have their agenda.
It's been a pretty busy
morning.
Yes.
For
the Axiom-1 crew.
There's a lot when you start talking to people about this mission. At first glance, it looks like billionaires going to space to have fun, and
At around
you know,
T-minus 4 hours and 21 minutes,
that's
crew
not
was
necessarily
formally
true.
handoff to
I mean, they are
SpaceX at
paying
the
a lot of
shuttle
money,
landing
and they're
facility
going to have
parking lot.
be able to do things they want to. But they're
At T
the
minus 3
time,
hours and
the
50
space
minutes,
station is
the
such
crew
a
arrived
valuable
at the
resource.
suit-up room
There's
located
no
in the Falcon
time
support building,
to
which
waste
is
up
just
there.
Right,
basically right
They're all
behind this camera view that
required.
you see there.
All four of them
Also
are
around then,
required
they
to
had their
be
pre-launch
involved with different
briefing,
experiments.
including
And a
weather
lot of them have done it,
information, launch
gone
details,
through the
and
selection
the
process with
weekend
different
with the
universities
tablets,
and
that they get to bring with
organizations
them
to
onto
put their
flight.
put
Which
their
brings
stamp
us
on it.
to
And
the current
so they
time
will be
difference.
busy. They'll be working 6 to 8 hours a day
At
just on the
T-minus
science
3 hours and
out of a 24-hour
25
day. And
minutes,
on
we
top of that,
will
they've got everything else. They'll have regular
the crew
chores
begin
on the
suiting
space
up.
station. You don't go up there and,
Once that
sit
process
on the
is
lounge
complete,
chairs and drink
they will
Mai Tais. You actually have to
return
do
the
work up
building
there.
and get
And
into
there's
Teslas.
just keeping things
We'll
clean
have
and,
2 astronauts in each of the Teslas, led by a
doing chores
secure
and living in space.
It's a
Now,
short drive
will they get a
to the
chance to
launch
look out the
pad, and
window?
once they arrive, the crew will ascend
Absolutely.
the fixed
And they'll get
service
time,
structure that you see there,
they'll have
and
time to
elevator
enjoy
up to a
themselves as far as
255-foot
experiencing
level. The crew
everything
will
that
then take
the
the
space
stairs up
station
the
has.
last 10
But they're
feet,
going to be
where
pretty
they will
busy.
stop
There's
and
no
make one
lounge chairs
final
up there.
phone call before
Yeah,
walking
that makes sense
down
for
the
sure.
crew access
Yeah.
aisle
But
to the White Room.
oh man,
The White Room is
I'm
their
sure they'll
last
get some
stop
good
before
cupola
climbing into
views
the
and hopefully get some
spacecraft,
good
a process
photography while
known
they're up
as
there. And
Oh yeah, I'm sure they also
SpaceX
have
team will run a
they all
series of
have a
checks to ensure the
full
seats, and vehicle
workday plan
evaluations
for other
are all
projects I'm
fully
doing. I'm sure
cooperative.
there's charitable organizations and personal projects and family friends, and I'm sure there'll be press conferences and stuff like that. This was going to be nice about this mission, as opposed compared to the Inspiration 4 mission, since that was considered a private mission. It surprised me that they hadn't promoted the fact that there wasn't going to be as much press as NASA does, because NASA has an edict, it's in its charter to inform and educate. So everything they do is literally out there, has to be put out there. But when you start flying a private mission on a private rocket, they don't have those requirements. Then they want to control their message, so they will do what they wanted to do. I think the I-4 team maybe got caught off guard, not realizing people were expecting so much. So I think any future missions like that will have a lot more press, and we'll see that in this Axiom flight to see how much more access the world gets to it. But they have no reason to hide anything unless it's something they're doing personal or something. But it's good for everybody when you have a lot of promotion and a lot of access to the public.
yeah, I completely agree. It was kind of funny because everything about Inspiration 4 was so public up until launch, and then after launch, it was kind of quiet for a couple days, and everybody was wondering, like, I thought this was going to be such a public event. And yeah, I think the more publicity on these types of things is better. Although when we keep moving forward with these commercial missions and private astronauts, I'm sure there will be some that have requests to have no coverage on them at all. Just kind of go up and do their thing and not have the world watching. So that'll be interesting to see too.
Exactly. And you have to balance it out, but it's a balancing act. Exactly. It's a balancing act about how much information was shared. And of course, like a flight of I-4, because they were just an orbital mission, they didn't, and it was only 3 days. Actually, technically, it was 2 days and some big change, just under 3 days. So they didn't have a lot of time actually up there to do a lot of things. So their slate was full from everything I've seen since. Plus, you always want to give any flight like that, that first 24 hours, you don't want to load them down, because you have a potential for dealing with space adaptation syndrome, and as people are acclimating to zero G. So you don't want to be forcing these people in front of a camera doing, talking to people if they don't feel good.
Right.
So that's something that NASA went through too. They just with the shuttle, and it's one of those things. It's hard to predict who's going to get sick and who's not going to get sick, but they've got the remedies, the quick fix remedies, and so forth too.
Just a few minutes from the Falcon support building.
That makes sense.
John, as we wait for that,
Yeah.
let's talk about.
So it looks like we're about T-minus 3 hours and 10 minutes to go. So a little while to go down on the T-minus 0 clock here. Obviously, crews will be not only looking at weather on the launch pad, but also down the ascent corridor as well. There are multiple places during the ride to orbit that the crew has the option, or I guess really it's all automated, but they have the option to abort to different parts along the way up. So you don't only need to make sure that the weather is clear in Florida, but you need to make sure the the weather is clear at all those places that you could end up in the ocean in the event of them needing to abort and come back safely down to Earth. So I think what teams are going to keep an eye on that. They'll keep an eye on range safety, make sure there's no vehicles in the restricted area around Cape Canaveral and Kennedy Space Center today. And obviously, teams will obviously make sure that the vehicle is healthy as the T-minus countdown keeps going. And yeah, so we'll be sticking with you here for a while this happens, and hopefully we'll see a good launch today.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Weather's good. SpaceX has a good track record for their countdowns. They have had last-minute issues, and that's just by the fact that they've just done it so much now.
Yep.
We were talking earlier about the new Netflix documentary, Return to Space, and the great behind-the-scenes stuff for the Demo 2 launch. But it's much more than that. It's not just about the Demo 2. It's about a lot more about SpaceX and about Elon and what they've built up over the years. And they're just so good at crossing their T's and dotting their I's. It's amazing. They really do know what they're doing. And there's an interesting part, and this has actually been in the media before, that when in the early 2010s, when NASA was trying to get the funding for the commercial space, there's a lot of political pressure against it. There's a lot of old space congressmen and senators who were trying to help protect the existing aerospace companies. And of course, back then, SpaceX was just only a few years old, a startup. And I remember when they had Neil Armstrong and Eugene Cernan come testify in Congress and talk about how this was a horrible idea and there were safety problems and there's all these unknowns and stuff. And then they interviewed Elon Musk, and Elon had said, guys like Neil and Gene Cernan were like heroes of his, and it really hurt him. And I felt betrayed by those two gentlemen. Now, they're heroes of mine too, but to hear those kind of comments to me was like, well, that's fine. You can have your opinion about that, but the world's changing, and people need to get on board with it. I mean, the way things happen, and of course, Elon's been proven to be a genius, and he's a genius for many things. I'm sure there's a lot of things that he regrets doing over his lifetime and his career and so forth. But people like to promote the good stuff, and I'm glad for that. But yeah, that's like I said, that Return to Space doc on Netflix is a must-see for anybody who's interested in space. It's absolutely brilliant. I teared up several times during and got excited. It's one of those things. I'm sure you're the same way. But when you see a Falcon 9 booster coming back, it doesn't matter if it's live or it's on tape. You get excited to see that thing. It's still one of the most unworldly things because you're used to seeing them going up, not coming down. And I've talked to plenty of people who thought it was all computer, CGI. Okay, no, I've been there. I've seen them land. They really do land.
It's so amazing. I can't wait to see one again in person sometime.
Oh yeah. Oh, I was the way the AX-1 was slipping, and of course forcing Crew 4 to slip. I was praying for the slip to occur to such a way that I could be home or be able to go down and see it. I'm stuck out on the West Coast for another week, and then when when Crew 4 launches, I actually have to be in Mexico. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It's the life you live, but
yeah.
Looking forward to at least an attempt to go see the SLS launch later this summer.
Yeah. Yep. So glad you brought the SLS up. A good thing to talk about for a few minutes while we just continue to wait for the countdown here. But if you've been following news and space news at all, you might know that SLS started the wet dress rehearsal process last week. There was a couple issues that teams ran into with some valves and loading fuel and these things, but all kind of part of what happens during a wet dress rehearsal and why we do testing. But this is the last big test for SLS before it launches, hopefully this year. If the teams are able to resolve a couple of these hiccups with just procedural changes and understanding the vehicle that they've built and how everything works, then we might see that thing launch this year, and it might happen in the next few months. So definitely something to keep an eye on. NASA's SLS moon rocket, we might see that thing take off pretty soon.
Yeah, people have their opinions about the SLS and the budget problems they're having and so forth. But once you get that hardware on the pad, it's like, it's time to go, guys. And I'm sure one of the reasons.
Walkout.
Oh yeah, crew walkout's coming out here soon. I think this is the famous wait. But on SLS, the running into these problems, people are like, well, why didn't they have this figured out? No, this is when you do that. I mean, got to remember the last time it was 9 years ago. No, more than that, 11 years ago.
Yeah.
Since they rolled any vehicle out. So there's a whole group of people having to learn. There they are walking out now.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yep.
That's a great backdrop, actually. They did a great job with the
they did.
Patch on each side, and
yeah, it's very big deal. This is interesting. It's all very casual, but it's all been scripted. I'm sure it's been scripted.
Rehearsed.
Yeah, it's funny. It's well, not funny. It's a comparison of the way they do things between, let's say, the Russians and the Americans. The Americans always very casually get out there, wave and everything. The Russians, when they do their walkout for a Soyuz launch, is all very strict, and they walk out in a certain order. They stop and walk and step in boxes, and they salute, and they get their final orders. About, oh yeah, high fives, all right, for everybody.
Right.
So yeah, it's fun to watch when these guys come out.
They some nice touches. I saw the license plate on the back said Axiom, and then they get the Axiom logo on the side of the Teslas here. So
I'm sure it's all part of the package.
Exactly. SpaceX doing a good job at showing what they're launching, and I'm sure Axiom is happy to sign on for that package and have their logo plastered over everything.
Oh yeah. Oh, Axiom is amazing. I'm so excited about they're going to get their first module of the ISS here in a few years, and that's really going to be the takeoff. When they fly their first module, it's going to be the starting gun for the commercial space stations, which is, I love to talk about that. People don't know that. I think they hear about the space station, International Space Station, supposedly coming, being deorbited in 2030. So what are we going to do after that? Well, before that station is decommissioned, they'll have at least 3 or 4 private commercial space stations online to take the workload, because the work they're doing on the International Space Station, both in science and in material processing and manufacturing, that's not going to stop. They're just going to transfer it from one lab to another.
Right.
You cannot express how important the ISS is right now. That continuous manned presence and all the work they're doing. It's tough to keep track of all of it. I think at any given point there's over 300 experiments going on.
Yeah.
And that's world-class science. And like I was saying earlier, that's one of the reasons these 4 gentlemen are going up there. They're sure they're going to be looking out the windows, but they're going to get the work out of them. They've got to take their time they're given up there and make it worthwhile.
And you made a good point there on uninterrupted low Earth orbit science. Like, it's been over 20 years since there's been any interruption and people up in orbit, which is really amazing. And I don't think enough people realize that if you have a 20-year-old, there hasn't been a single second of their lives that people weren't living and working on the International Space Station, which is amazing.
Correct.
So.
And that's very important that we keep that presence. Just being up there adds to the history, and it gives the overall presence in space that much more gravitas. As long as you've got people in space, you're doing work in space, and you're proving how valuable it is. And like I said, when the commercial space stations start coming online, it's going to, the amount of work that gets done is going to be increased several-fold because of the additional stations and so forth. And anytime you get the commercial world involved, you get more opportunities for other people too.
Yep. All good stuff. I'd like to see a few labs in orbit soon.
Yes, absolutely. It's going to be really interesting. One thing I get when I'm talking to young people or parents with young kids about space, and we talk about how these youngsters will have the opportunity in their careers to go to work in space, not necessarily to be astronauts and be the right stuff kind of thing, but to actually go work in space. Your job, it'll say, I need a lab technician or something along that lines, and the job will be 6 months in orbit, that kind of thing. That'll become the normal thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So back in 2016 or 2015, I went to the International Space Station Research and Development Conference, and the obviously the big term you keep hearing is commercialization of low Earth orbit. And there's this organization called CASIS. I forget exactly
Yes.
how to describe what CASIS does, but they obviously are a big proponent of commercialization of low Earth orbit. But the kind of running joke at that time was, we've been talking about commercialization of low Earth orbit for like 10, 15, 20 years now. When is this actually going to happen? And I think now it's been, I don't know, how many years has it been? We're going on close to 10 years here in a couple of years.
Yeah.
I think we're finally there. We see, we see Starlink in low Earth orbit. We see these commercial labs coming to orbit. We see those orbital hotels hopefully going to be coming to orbit. We saw Inspiration 4 last year. We're seeing this Axiom mission now. I think we've reached the commercialization of low Earth orbit. I think we're there.
Absolutely. It's been proven now that there is a market for that between I-4, between Axiom, Blue Origin, New Shepard, Virgin Galactic. You've proven there's a market. People are willing to pay the money for that kind of thing, whether it be commercial factories or labs or just tourism at this point. It's been proven, so you're seeing the door open up. Of course, it doesn't happen overnight, and there's a whole process involved with, if somebody says, well, I'm going to build a space hotel. Well, you don't just build a space hotel. It could take up to 10 years to put your project together, find the money, get the setup, and it's not, you have to find somebody who knows how to do that stuff, so you can help them or have them help you do it.
Right.
Yeah, it's an exciting time to be alive. I mean, I remember the heady days of Apollo. Of course, I was just a kid. I just knew that people were going to space. Now I look back historically at it, and it was a heady days then. And the shuttle program too. Then the shuttle program, that was more operational. That was more like regular stuff, regular travel. Unfortunately, the program was very expensive, so they had to cancel it and shift NASA's money to other things. But now with the commercial side coming in, NASA doesn't have to waste their money on that. This is all done to make money. I mean, it's what it's about. You'd like to be more charitable about it, but people go to do commercial space to make money, and that's fine. That's absolutely within the realm of how our system works.
Yep.
So
we are seeing two of the crew get into the elevator to ride up to the top of the launch tower now, and eventually we'll see the other two join them. At that point, I think they'll all walk together down the crew access arm. Though, you know what? They'll probably make a stop at that phone. They usually make a call from the top of the launch pad before walking down the crew access arm. So last two astronauts waiting for their elevator here, but we should see them going up pretty quickly here.
I love the ninjas. I love the SpaceX ninja suits.
Yep, me too.
And those people are much braver than you know, because in the Florida hot sun, you got to be baking in those things.
Very true. I haven't actually considered that.
Yeah. Those guys, looks like the crew's in very good spirits, are having fun, which is good. I would be excited and nervous, or let's put it that way. I will be excited and nervous if I ever get to fly.
Me too.
It's just the grins on their faces say so much.
So they're going to go up to the 200.
I wonder if we'll get a shot of 39B and 39A side by side here.
I hope
something
so.
Interesting to mention that this is the first time in many years where there is a crewed capable rocket sitting on A and B at the same time. So hopefully they'll show that off.
Yeah. Exactly.
Obviously we're
Yeah, that's somebody had on Twitter yesterday had a flashback to the last time that happened with the two shuttles on the pad. I didn't catch the date, but that was didn't occur often, but when it did, it was a pretty big deal. I think there's actually some pictures back during the Apollo days. That was a rarity to have two vehicles on the pad on the pads at one time. Excuse me. Excuse me.
I'm excited for obviously we're seeing SpaceX launch almost once a week down at the Cape. And now we've also heard that Amazon has bought 38 launches on ULA's new rocket, and I assume the majority of those will also be from the Cape. So we're going to get to the point here in the next few years where I think we're seeing multiple launches a week, and I think we're going to have to see some regulations and stuff change to make it possible to see 2 launches in a single day. And I can't wait until I can go to Florida and see 2 different rockets launch on the same day. It'll be just amazing to see.
Absolutely. This is something that SpaceX has been talking about for a long time. Is they're only at this point in time, their only limitation is clearances for their launch cadence. They're talking about launching 60 rockets this year. That blows every record out. I mean, they've just got it down with their reusable boosters and their processing and so forth. Yeah, the Amazon Project Kuiper deal basically bought up every empty launch for the next 5 years, I think it is, not only on ULA, but also Ariane and, and a New Glenn once that starts flying.
Yep.
So yeah, you're going to be seeing, they're potentially could be launching the Kuiper constellation quicker than Starlink was going up, only because they're going to condense it down into a much shorter period of time.
Right.
So we'll see how that goes. I think there's a deadline. I believe it's a use it or lose it deadline for 2026 for the Kuiper constellation certification, the FAA certification.
Right. Yeah, I think I remember hearing that from Starlink at one point too. So yeah, it makes sense that Kuiper would have a similar deal.
And it's not just get one up. You actually have to have a certain percentage, but it's stepped. It's certain percentage by certain dates. And if you don't, you lose your contract, and then if you don't keep up with that. And there is always a potential for that kind of thing to happen if you've got a problem keeping your launch cadence up and so forth.
Right.
But I think that's probably the reason Amazon went to this deal where they bought as many rocket launches as possible in a short period of time, so they could guarantee at least getting it started and at least getting their foot in the door and keep the regulators from shutting them down.
Yeah, and I'm kind of.
I'm gonna say there's a drone shot. They've got a nice drone shot of the crew getting ready to walk in the crew access arm. They're making their phone calls.
Yeah, they actually had some really good shots over the last couple of minutes that really show the scale of this launch tower. It's really amazing. But about one more thing about Project Kuiper, they're really putting their hands, or they're really dependent on Blue Origin delivering engines. I mean, ULA's rocket is going to be Blue Origin. Obviously, New Glenn is entirely Blue Origin. In the event that Blue Origin struggles with maybe they have a test that doesn't go quite right sometime in the next year, that could delay those engines even further, and they're kind of single-threaded there in a way. So.
Yeah, it's a lot of eggs in one basket, and hindsight being 2020, looking back at ULA's strategy, I think if they had a chance to do it over again, they would do it something different. But they were between a rock and a hard place. They were buying Russian engines. They wanted to get their Vulcan rocket up and running as soon as possible. And apparently, Blue Origin offered a really good deal, making the price low enough that it was worth going for it. But that's one of those things in this industry, especially I would say old space. They're really slow to react to things because they're the only game in town. Well, now there's other customers or other providers like SpaceX and now Rocket Lab and Astra and so forth, and Firefly coming online.
Right.
Now, and those companies are much more agile and can react faster. So, and they all got, I don't want to say caught with their pants down, but they got caught changing vehicles. Same thing with the European Space Agency. With Ariane Space, they're trying to get their Ariane 6 up and running, so they have limited number of launch slots available, like on the Ariane 5 and so forth. So it was one of those worst case scenarios, or perfect storm type scenarios, where people just got caught. And of course, SpaceX is just sitting there reacting. When OneWeb lost their rides on the Soyuz, everybody's like really worried. And I was like, no, SpaceX will step up. There's no reason SpaceX can't do that. While they're technically in competition, SpaceX and OneWeb are in competition because of Starlink and OneWeb. There's money to be made, and there's no reason not to come out looking like the good guy in this. I mean, Elon's proven they can react quickly. SpaceX can make an adjustment, and it's like I said, they can launch as many times as they have permission to. And when, like you were talking about, once they get the certification process and all the other legalities taken care of to allow multiple launches in a day, then it's the sky's the limit at that point.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, they're signing the SpaceX logo. That's very cool. I like that they're allowing NASA and SpaceX to share that space.
Yeah, it's really cool. I just love all like the different traditions that they've either kept from back in the day shuttle missions, or they've established some new traditions as well. Lou is commenting, said, God, I love those SpaceX suits. I know they're such a cool suit.
Yeah, they are. They're such a game changer when you compare them to the old pumpkin suits and the suits they flew during the Apollo days. And of course, they're a different animal. They're IVA suits, just designed to keep the pressure, keep them alive if there's a leak. But of course, now with Polaris Dawn, they're going to be designing an actual EVA suit, and it'll be interesting to see how much the suit changes. I can't imagine those helmets. They're using the same type of helmets because they need a better seal than that for an IVA. But
I bet it'll look the same, but just way bulked up.
Yeah, exactly. It'll just be like a steroid version of the guys. One of the traditions you were talking about, traditions, they were new traditions and old traditions. I saw a tweet from Mike LA about there was a plate of cookies, and he says, except for the presentation, these are the exact same cookies I had during the shuttle era. And I thought that was great. Somebody remembered that, and somebody on the crew, somebody at NASA, somebody at SpaceX, who knows, make them the cookies and so forth. Those traditions are really important. You get to from the outside, you're watching how the NASA astronauts and not only NASA but Russian, they all have their traditions. And there's actually part of the Return to Space documentary, they start talking deep dive into people's superstitions about flight and things they do, and it's hilarious. But people they believe in it, so there's no reason not to do it.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. It looks weird him having his hand out of his glove, but his glove is still attached to his suit. That was interesting looooking.
Yeah, they really thought out of the box on those suits, man. That's amazing.
Yep.
Have you seen the Dreamliner suits that they'll be using?
I haven't actually. No.
They pretty much are just kind of a modernized version of the orange pumpkin suits, but they're blue. They're not quite as thick. There's some new modern materials, but it looks like it's part of that family of suits. If you once again, you put them up against the SpaceX suits, and they're like two different beasts.
Right. Ooh, not much clearance between the top of his helmet and those screens there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm sure they're bumping into those things all the time.
Basically, they get in their seats.
By the way, if you follow any of the SpaceX manned launches, they talk about how those suits are all custom made for each astronaut because of the way they're a single piece suit. They have to be custom made. But I have never heard if they get to take those home or not.
That's a great point. I kind of doubt it. I don't know though. Maybe they can.
Maybe SpaceX hangs on to it for them or something, or I don't, who knows? That's something, if we ever get a chance to talk to the I-4 crew, we can ask them about that.
I bet there's some sort of like debrief situation on the suit, making sure everything worked as it should and doing some analysis on the materials and all that stuff. But yeah, I wonder what happens after that. I wonder if the helmets could probably be reused.
I can see the helmets because that's a component they can detach and so forth. But I mean, since it's a custom stitched, and I can't imagine there's no interchangeable parts like the EVA suits, the NASA currently uses, where there's a different sizes: small, medium, large legs, small, medium, large hard upper torso, and arms, sleeves, and stuff like that, because they can mix and match. And that system works well for space station right now.
Yep.
Of the size of the bucket that they sit in, so essentially the length of the seat.
More pictures.
More pictures, and we got two of the crew strapped into their seats now.
Yep.
So the two more crew members, so another one walking in now, and then they'll eventually be working on hatch closure procedures. And we're really buzzing through the timeline here. It's going by.
Yeah, it is. It's moving much quicker than I imagined, but it's one of those things, or faster than I remember. I remember the I-4 countdown was excruciatingly long. Of course, we were out in this Florida heat at that
Yep.
point, so everything was excruciating back then.
And just being there in person, your heart, you get your heart going, and everything feels like it's taking a long time just because your anticipation for launch and hoping things don't scrub. It's obviously a completely different beast. Just being there to watch it, I can't imagine what it's like sitting in on top of that thing. And I feel
I'm sure
like
it's
time
exciting.
dilation waiting to see a launch gets nutty. It feels like once you get down to the last 5 minutes, each minute feels like it's like an hour, and then the final seconds, it's just so weird. But being on top of that thing must be so strange.
I remember some of the Apollo astronauts talked about while they were sitting waiting for the countdown, they had a slightly different fueling way their countdown was when the vehicle was fueled. SpaceX puts the astronauts on board, puts them in, seals them up, activates the launch escape system, and then they fuel. On the Apollo days and the shuttle days, they would start fueling well before the astronauts got there. So you could get, in theory, a much shorter wait, but they say the noises and stuff, the creaking and so forth, I mean, it's just part of the vehicle coming alive because of that cold. You're taking a warm Florida afternoon, the vehicle starts to chill down and starts to creak and make noise and comes to life.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've read a lot of astronaut memoirs, and some of my favorite parts of those books are just how they describe what it's like sitting in those in the capsule or in the shuttle, just hearing all those noises and waiting for it to happen. I was reading. I'm gonna be honest. I get some of them confused sometimes, but a lot of the memoirs kind of glorify that process. But one that I read recently, and it might have been Riding Rockets, which is what Mike Mullane's book. But it was one that I read recently where he describes the process so differently and actually makes it sound miserable, and he had to sit there and wait to the final seconds at T-0, and then there was an abort, and then he had to go back in 3 or 4 times. Then his flight was delayed months, and then he had such a miserable experience until he finally got to lift off. But it's funny to see the differences in opinions there.
Yeah, everybody has a different opinion about it and have a different experience. But I can understand if you're an anxious person and you get on there and you're ready to go, and especially the shuttle. There were shuttles that were, I don't want to say cursed, but there was a couple of them there. We didn't think we were ever going to get them off the ground. Sometimes you're just like, what? It's just that space. Space is hard and space takes time. So yeah, I imagine if I was in that same situation, I would be miserable about the 4th or 5th time.
Yeah.
I'd be like, oh God, let's do this thing. Especially if you got a life you want to get back to.
I mean, I've been on a flight that was stuck on a runway for an hour, and that made me anxious. So I can't imagine what it must be like.
Oh yeah, it's the exact same thing. I've been on so many flights. I've been, and when you get delayed, sometimes you're like, well, I'm going to miss my connection or something. So you try to find other options, and sometimes you don't have any options. So you just have to be patient and wait. But then again, it's a hell of a ride, and the view's awesome.
Yep, exactly.
So.
Well, do you mind if I get up for just about 1 minute here and go grab a refresh on my coffee?
Sure. I'm going to go take a quick little voice room break here, and I'll be right back.
Okay, sounds good. I'll shut off our cams for a moment, and for everybody watching, thanks for watching. We'll be back in literally like just 1 or 2 minutes.
Thanks. That insignia plays an important role, right, in capturing the soul of a mission. So let's go and take a closer look at the AX-1 mission patch itself. So, representing the heart of this mission is the ISS itself, with the solar array wings prominently displayed as each crew member's national flag, and signifying the key message of this particular mission: international cooperation and collaboration. Behind the ISS, you can see a cascading plane of blue, representing Earth's atmosphere and highlighting the journey humanity has taken to get to this new chapter. Above the ISS, 4 bright stars, anchored by an atom in the center, create a constellation marking the mission's scientific and aspirational objectives. And then finally, the golden border around the patch represents the significance of this mission to the people of Israel, inspired by the logo of the Rakia banner.
we can see Commander MLA accessing his crew tablet, where he is able to monitor mission status and follow along with our procedures. Amazing view of pad 39A with 39B in the background there. Gosh, what a gorgeous day in Florida.
Yeah, it's looking like a perfect launch day.
I'm back.
Looking at the launch vehicle there, you can see that the top half is, has a very bright white color. The bottom half has a little bit more of a grayish color. In addition to the fact that the Dragon has been reused, we've also reused this Falcon 9 first stage as well. It will be making its 5th flight today. It previously supported the Inspiration 4 mission
I'm back.
just a few months
Yeah,
ago.
they just had the shot of the drone flying around, or maybe a helicopter with the 39 to 39B.
That we talked about. Without this, these private astronaut missions wouldn't be possible.
Yeah. So far, SpaceX has completed.
All right, I am back
2
as well.
Dragon missions, including 29 visits to the International Space Station.
A few minutes ago,
13
Anne
29
Marie
missions have
O'Farrell
been
said
flown
hello. Hello,
during
Anne.
this,
How are
which,
you?
Saying it out loud is still just wild to me.
That's my daughter.
The Dragon capsule flying today, like we
Hey, Ann.
mentioned before, has flown
That's
before.
funny.
Named Endeavour, it will be making its 3rd trip to space. It previously supported the NASA Crew 2 mission, and before that, Demo 2.
Man, I did not get enough sleep last night.
As for our
Me
launch
neither.
vehicle, Falcon 9 has completed 145 total launches. Over
Yeah, so
half of
you
those
you
on
generally when you
flown
travel, you
rockets,
try to stay on your own
31
time zone. Is that what you're
missions
saying?
Yeah, that's what I was saying before. It just doesn't make any
its
sense
fifth
if I'm
flight.
if somewhere where I can manage it, like out on the West Coast, the 2-hour difference from the Central Time Zone, I can deal with it as long as my work doesn't push me off in that. Because once I'm home, I only have sometimes I'm only home for a couple days, and trying to change sleep patterns, it's just heck. So I try to just stay on it. So getting up early is normal for me. So this is no big deal. Of course, the old days, back when I was doing shuttle support out at Dryden, we would do launch support, and we would have to get, like a dawn launch in Florida would be, 3 a.m. for us, and then we'd have to be on station 90 minutes or an hour before launch. So that means you have to get up like midnight or 1 o'clock to get out there.
Right.
And then, hey, we scrubbed. Oh, damn, we got to do it again tomorrow. So a lot of early mornings, late nights, that kind of stuff. But one thing turned out to be kind of a pleasure was at Edwards Air Force Base, middle of the night, it's pitch black out there. And so you'd be out there, 4 o'clock in the morning, just waiting and listening to the countdown on the radio nets and so forth. And all of a sudden you hear this noise, you look out the window, and there's a fox or some wildlife just walking by your truck, your TV truck, because it's out in the middle of the desert, pitch dark. And we have a little bit of light, but we try to keep the light pollution down there and bothering people. But there'd be a whole bunch of vehicles out on the lake bed at the same time, so you could see little flashes of light out there. And it's very serene, very quiet, very beautiful out there. And then sunrise would come, and you have to get to work.
Right.
They've been in this from day one. They've been training hard.
That sounds good. I like that.
Yeah.
It's really.
Look at that shot. It's definitely a beautiful day down there.
Oh yeah, absolutely gorgeous. It's
for sure.
Florida weather being what it is.
Ocean looks calm too.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, it does. Wow. Yeah, that's good. They're flying the station corridor, so that's like 54 degrees, if I remember correctly. So they're going to be climbing up. Yeah, they'll be climbing up the eastern seaboard. Interesting. I just had a Scottish couple I talked to on Wednesday at Space Center Houston, and they'd been to Florida once to see a shuttle launch, and of course it got scrubbed, so they had to go home, and they flew home to Scotland. And then they were watching on TV, and they mentioned that the shuttle would be going up over Scotland, so they watched the launch and ran outside and got to watch the orbiter go over Scotland.
That's cool.
And they so they said they count that as they watched the launch. And I said it counts for me.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fair. It must have been really cool to see that. Yeah, I think one of the recovery positions in the event that they needed to abort is off of Shannon, Ireland. So
Yes.
obviously in the grand scale of the planet, in Scotland's backyard, pretty much.
Yeah.
Although in the case of
Absolutely.
it's not really a chug.
What else are they doing there today? Anything? I guess this is going to be more or less a standard manned launch, unlike I-4, which was a different launch profile. I think they were more easternly, and plus they were going to a higher altitude. So this should be this should also mimic the shuttle launches pretty much as far as that. So people going up the eastern seaboard, I know people in Georgia and South Carolina and even some of the barrier islands on North Carolina would regularly see shuttle launches. I think they had a better success at night from seeing it, but daytime, if it's nice and clear, they'll see them.
Yeah, even I forget which launch it was, but some launch in the last 6 months. I think it was a crude launch, maybe, or I forget. But people all over Virginia, and even I think in as far as like I want to even say Chicago. Like people were taking pictures of the upper stage of one of these launches that went up the eastern seaboard.
Yeah, actually, I do remember that. That's the interesting thing. Depending on the time of day and the lighting conditions, the first stage separation and second stage ignition creates that beautiful aura cloud. Then, like I said, based on the lighting conditions, those early morning and late evening launches, sometimes you're dark enough down on the ground that the sunlight, as they get higher, the sun lights that up. And it's especially over in Southern California, some of the stuff that they've photographed and videotaped over Southern California from the launches from Vandenberg, the southern launches.
Oh yeah,
it's
crazy.
Yeah, you couldn't do better than CGI for movies.
I honestly, thinking. So we both attended I-4 Inspiration 4 launch, and we got a great what we call it, a jellyfish from that launch, and that was I think one of the most surreal things I've ever seen. I think that was up there with the total solar eclipse in 2017. I think just seeing that the jellyfish phenomena, and then the little RCS thruster bursts, or the bursts from like the booster coming back and stuff. I cannot describe what it's like to see that in person. So, if anybody's gonna go see a launch, if you get to go see a launch that lines up near sunset or sunrise, that you have an opportunity to see this jellyfish phenomenon as well. Oh my goodness, you gotta! It's amazing.
Yeah, that I-4 launch was one of those real rare gems of weather and lighting conditions. Not only did we see the jellyfish, the separation, but we saw the first stage entry burn.
Yeah,
it's a small pin in the light, but you could see it going down there, and it disappeared and dropped below the horizon. So that's great to be able to see that for yourself and see the whole shooting match from top to bottom.
Yeah, it was amazing. Can't wait to get back out there and see another one.
Yeah. Fingers crossed for SLS. They get the wet rehearsal done and get all the procedures and get that going.
Yep.
I know there are certain windows because of the orbital mechanics. They have windows in June and July, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
That'll be tough. I have a lot of people ask me about they talk about going to see a launch, and what's the best way to do it. And my advice is always give yourself a week after the planned launch date. So if it's June 1st or whatever, plan a whole week of time for slips.
Yeah.
Because as you know, that things change, they have to deal with it, and that's never going to change. That's always going to happen. SpaceX can perfect their launches, but they can't control the weather. So
yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Although I'll be interesting to see how future launch vehicles handle making themselves more flexible with weather and things like that. We talk about Starship all the time, and one of the goals for Starship is point-to-point transportation on Earth. So rather than jumping in a plane and taking 6 or 7 hours to get from New York to London, you might be able to jump in a Starship and get to London. I forget how the orbits work, but pretty much anywhere on the planet in like a half hour. But of course, only if you want Starship to turn into something that could replace even any small percentage of airline traffic, then they got to be pretty good for weather. You can't be having weather delays for that type of stuff.
All-weather rockets are a dream that people are trying to achieve, but you can't fight with Mother Nature. You'll lose. Lightning especially. We've seen from the Apollo days. So
Great views from inside the capsule now. We're seeing all 4 of the crew strapped in, looking good, looking happy and healthy, and things look like they're progressing nicely down the T-minus countdown. We are now at T-minus 2 hours, 29 minutes, and 34 seconds.
yeah, they should be sealing the hatch up and doing their pressure test soon, and then they'll get the go for tanking. But first thing they'll tell them or ask them to close their helmets, which is an important part, because once they start fueling, before they start fueling, they have to initiate the launch abort system, which is unlike the Apollo days where you had the launch escape tower on the top. The Dragon capsule uses the boosters,
Super Dracos, right?
Super Dracos. That's the Super Dracos on the side, which are more than adequate for that kind of thing. That's one of those parts of the Dragon. The original Dragon design was going to be a propulsive landing, and talking about the boosters looking incredibly fake when they land. Talk about a capsule landing.
Oh my goodness!
Without parachutes and so forth. And I guess a lot of people didn't think that was a good idea, but they at least left them on for the design. And I've always wondered if the Super Dracos were available in any kind of other abort modes. Say they get into orbit and something happens with the standard Dracos that they use to deorbit. If the Super Dracos were available in any kind of a mode where they could use them to help deorbit them or control them.
Yeah, that's a good question, actually.
Yeah, I'd have to pick somebody from SpaceX's brain. I did funny thing a couple weeks ago. I was walking out of the hotel lobby, and I was wearing my Inspiration 4 jacket. And just as I was walking out, there was a young man walking in with his SpaceX T-shirt and a SpaceX hat. And I go, "Hey, I like your hat and I like your shirt." And he goes, "Oh, I like your jacket too." And I said, "Do you work at SpaceX? Because it's Southern California. There's a good chance if you're wearing a SpaceX shirt, you've got something to do with SpaceX." And so, "Oh, absolutely. I'm a welder. I weld on the Dragon capsules." Well, funny enough, about an hour before, Elon had made his announcement that the fourth Dragon capsule, which they were announcing named Freedom, was going to be the last Dragon capsule. They're not going to make it anymore. That they're reusable, so they felt 4 was enough. And of course, they don't want to spend money on things that's going to compete with Starship. And I happened to mention, "Hey, did you see Elon's tweet about Freedom being the last capsule?" And he goes, "What?" I'm like, "Oops, sorry, guy." I don't think his career's over. He may be moving on to other projects, but
absolutely.
I felt bad at that point because his wife and kids are there, and my friend's like, "Hey, man, don't ruin his day."
No, I'm sure they got plans for all those people. SpaceX is one of those companies that if you're valuable, they're not going to let you go. At least not anytime soon. They got so many plans in the next 5-10 years that I think they need all the good people they can get. So. Oh,
absolutely. And now I keep hearing about the Tesla's going to build AI robots.
Yeah. Yep. Tesla bot. We'll see when they start dumping the resources into that. It's just kind of, I feel like, with Tesla, we hear about the Cybertruck and we hear about the Tesla Semi, and I absolutely think those are 2 products that Tesla will build and deliver. But I think they like to show off kind of what they're planning to do in the future, but they don't really tell you when it's going to happen. So they got the Tesla AI bot, but I don't know if that's a 5-year thing. I think that's probably more like a 10-year thing.
Well, did they purchase a company that are already building AI robots, or is this something they're going to build from scratch?
I think there was a couple acquisitions, but I forget exactly.
Well, I mean, if essentially the Tesla software is an AI, so that makes a perfect sense that you could take that and port it out into some other device. Take that intelligence, take that resource, and make it available for other things.
Yep.
So
that would make sense.
Now our robot overlords will have a Tesla logo on
it. Oh man, it's crazy how all that.
Which makes me more comfortable. I'll tell you that.
I would agree with you personally. I don't know if I think maybe 50% of the population wouldn't agree with you, but that's okay.
Yeah, I agree. That's fine. It's an old Simpsons joke, but yeah. So
one thing to note here when we're moving closer to hatch closing is I've learned that on every crewed mission, I've made the mistake of assuming that something is going wrong with the hatch closing because it takes so long, and they have to ratchet it down, and then it looks like they loosen it up, and then they check the seals, and then maybe there's like a little granule of sand somewhere, and they have to go back in. But yeah, just because it takes them a long time to work on the hatch does not mean that there's any problem with the hatch, and they have plenty of time in the countdown to address making sure that hatch is closed quickly. But I catch myself every single crewed launch being like, oh man, are they gonna have to delay? They're taking a long time on this hatch closing.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's not something that was well known about during the shuttle program and well, a little bit in the shuttle, but in the Apollo program too, is that sealing those hatches is a really delicate operation because you've got those fine rubber seals, and you're right, they're very meticulous about cleaning the seals off real well and getting closed, because you want that seal's got to be good and tight for the entire mission. That hatch is not designed to be opened in space. That's why you have the docking port and so forth. And so shuttle and Apollo is the same way. You don't want to have a leak on that down the road, so you make sure it's well sealed. So you take your time, and you're right, they build a lot of time into the countdown for them to have the time to do that. And of course, once you seal it, you've got to do the pressure check, and they've got to make sure there's no leaks and so forth. So that always takes time. And it's just a patience thing. But yeah, I remember the first time I'm like, oh man, they're gonna have a problem. Oh no, it's just normal hatch thing. So
yeah, crew 1, I remember that. Demo 2, and also Inspiration 4. I remember sitting on the bleachers being like, oh dang, this is taking a long time.
Yeah. Part of the normal procedure.
Yep.
So, I just noticed the stickers from the previous missions are putting the stickers on the of each time it flies. So there's Demo 2, and is that Crew 2?
It might be.
Yeah, it's Endeavor, right? They're flying Endeavor. Yeah. So it's
That makes sense.
Yeah. That was another thing in the Return to Space documentary on Netflix. They talk about the fact that the family, Bob and Doug's family, they both are married to other astronauts, and
right.
It's a unique situation, and they both have kids, and both couples have kids and children, and they want to make sure they're taken care of and so forth. So it's a very, I don't want to say risky, but having two parents as astronauts is, of course, like having two parents as firefighters or police officers. You have to be sensitive to things like that. And they did a very good job in preparing them and so forth. But if I was a kid and both my parents were astronauts, I would be in heaven, and I'd want to be an astronaut too. So.
Yep. Oh, we got crew seat rotation happening right now. We got the crew going back into their launch positions, which is great. All good signs indicating that the countdown is going according to plan.
Yep.
I really would like a VR mock-up of this capsule. I want to go through all the countdown procedures from inside the capsule. I'm big into VR. There's some really good experiences for the ISS actually. Fly around the ISS and find your way into one of the areas, and then you use the Canadarm to help berth one of the cargo carriers and stuff. I would love an experience like that had to do with the Dragon. So maybe somebody's working on that.
I hope so. I mean, that's something you could put at any of the visitor centers. I mean, like Space Center Houston already has a VR setup, but to be able to do a VR simulation of in the capsule, like getting suited up and so forth, yeah, I'd pay for that. I actually got to try out the space station VR. Better part about a year and a half ago. One of my coworkers had bought the Oculus Rift goggles, and he had bought into I guess it was Time Magazine was doing the production of it, and some of the early stuff. And they didn't have the moving stuff. It was all where they had imaged stationary, so you could only stay in a certain area. And I got to tell you, that was amazing. I mean, VR, there's a lot of promises about VR that have not come true, but that was amazing. And not only the imagery, because they shot it in 4K, so the imagery, you could zoom, you could move closer and get better images and stuff. But it's the audio when you get the surround sound. And of course, the space station is very, very noisy inside. That's because you've got all the fans running and other noise-making equipment.
Right.
But because you're able to move, you got the stereo here, you can hear yourself moving. That to me added so much more realism to it. with the noise. And I was like, oh man, I got to get me a set of these. And I started looking, going, no, I guess I'll wait. I'll wait till I get win a scratcher or something in the lottery to pay for that stuff. But
Yeah, we
definitely
will.
pay for that stuff.
We can talk off stream at some point, but there's a couple options now that are like absolutely incredibly affordable. That
Oh, really?
There's one particular. I generally try to stay away from saying big brand names on streams and stuff, but there's one really good product that's very affordable nowadays.
Cool. Yeah, definitely.
Definitely some awesome experiences that are worth getting into for sure.
All right. So, have you heard if they got? Well, we'll know once the hatch closes. When their visors are down, they may be doing suit pressure checks. That's part of their check-in because they have to do once they rotate the seats. They want to do comm checks and shoot suit pressure checks. So that's you want to. If you have a problem with the suit, you need to know before you close the hatch.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we usually get to hear those comm checks and everything too.
Let's see if I can hear that. Yeah, they're going through comm checks right now.
Draco thruster system, doing an inertial measurement unit alignment, and right now they're working mostly the mechanical activities, getting the crew in, and as we'll see coming up, the hatch closeout, leak checks, and then eventually at T-1 hour, the advanced team will be leaving the pad. So right now, T-minus 2 hours, 18 minutes, 10 seconds. Continue to be go for an on-time launch this morning of the Axiom-1 mission.
Wow, weather is really looking good. The shot from the launch pad's really nice.
Yep, don't think there's any cloud rule violations here.
Yeah.
Everything continuing
Go for seat
to
rotation.
progress
Nice.
nominally in preparation for our launch of the
It's nice to hear
Axiom-1
John
crew.
Input's voice again. He's one of
2
those
hours and 17
settling
minutes.
voices. The old
Everyone is, as you can see,
veteran.
buckled in their seat.
You get and
Crew has
having worked for NASA for 13 years, you get used to those voices. The regular commentators, the Rob Naviuses and the
panels above them.
Kyles and so forth. And it's nice to hear a familiar voice on their
Absolutely.
launches. He's one of those guys I'd love to sit down and talk to for a couple hours just to pick his brain on things.
Absolutely.
Going through those
Absolutely.
checks now. Now, the spacesuits that you see were designed in-house here at SpaceX, and while they look super cool, that's not their primary function. The spacesuit is actually a really important extension of the spacecraft itself, and a lot more complex than you would think at just a glance. Here are 2 members of our spacesuit team, Chris Trigg and Maria Sundin, telling us how this suit came to be.
I think one of the things that's important in the development of
Seat
the suit
rotation is.
I think your stream might be. What's your T-minus clock at?
Well, it depends which one I'm looking at. 23. Yeah, I'm not live here. Hold on a second. There we go. Yeah, sorry, I'm running multiple screens here. Sorry.
All good.
I gotta get a better system I take on the road. I think I just need a second laptop. This one's actually my old MacBook is starting to get very cranky. So
this actually might be one of my last streams from this location, and then I'll be setting up the studio down in Texas, and then hopefully there's been so many things about my stream and the layout and how everything works that I've been meaning to iron out. So that'll be a good opportunity to have a fresh room to stream in, and I'll get all the layouts and everything straightened. And I'm excited to have some videos down there.
Did I see right that your balcony faces Starbase?
Yes-ish. So I can't see. I wouldn't be able to see like the pad. Hypothetically, if there was nothing between me and the pad, I could see it. But the water. So I'm right on the water, but it's a few degrees off. There's basically there's no shot of the pad. But if FAA approves orbital launches from that facility, I think my house is one of the closest places you can get to an orbital launch of a rocket that big from anywhere. So.
Oh yeah, there's no problem. You'll have no problem seeing and hearing it once it gets off the pad.
Yep.
But
yep. But
are you gonna-
I'll be closer anyway. I'll drive down to the park at the bottom of South Padre Island and see it from 5 miles away.
Oh yeah, that's the place. I was gonna say I know that a few of the other streamers take up residence in the hotel, some of the hotels there on their balconies facing south, and use
There's
that.
one specific hotel. I'm already I already have I haven't figured out where they all go. That way I can get a camera set up in one of them.
Yeah.
So about a minute and a half ago.
Yeah, in fact, I have family that lives back farther into the valley, a small town called La Feria, which is just due east of Harlingen. And I was talking to one of my wife's cousins who lives there in that area, and they said, "So are we going to be able to see this thing?" I said, "Man, not only are you going to see this, you're going to hear it. You're going to feel it that far away, 30 miles away, that out of a rocket." Now, fingers crossed on the FAA and the EPA approvals.
Yeah.
It would be a real shame if that at least we don't get a couple launches out of there.
Yeah, I agree.
Hopefully they'll come to an understanding and maybe do, once again, it's a regulatory issue and they've got to deal with it. And but Elon's not giving up. I mean, they're still continuing out there. There's construction. They're still working on the methane farm, and everything else goes on there.
Yep, always in constant movement. And actually, I had never really seen it as, it gets busy there, but I've never seen it really as busy as it was on the, let's see, what's today, 8th? On like the weekend of the Thursday, Friday of the 31st and the 1st, so much was happening down there. They were doing construction on the road. They had piles and piles of stones coming in. They had construction equipment all along the front side of the Starbase sign. They had Jersey barriers down the middle of the highway, which they usually don't have. They were gung-ho, full steam ahead on infrastructure down there. So I don't think until they get a solid yes or no, they're just going to keep plowing ahead. So
that's the Elon way. Until somebody says no, until you get, it's the old easier to get forgiveness and permission. I don't know, but he's going to keep going forward. In fact, they were working on the roads all the way back in December. I remember that same deal where they had barriers up because that road was never designed to carry the weights that's been doing so. They was tearing it up pretty bad, so they had to go in sections, tear it out, lay down the new bed, lay down the new surface. They also widened it considerably, so it made it easier. And that's one of those things that SpaceX is doing out of their own pocket. That's still technically a public road, but they're putting it out of their own pocket. And I think they also the plans are to do the same thing back all the way to the port. They've built a new road so that if they bring anything through the port of Brownsville, they can bring it down the road, and so they'll have to improve the road for that also for carrying anything heavy.
Yeah, there's like some side access road that they're working on.
Yeah, it was not. It was about when I was there in December. I would say it was probably about 80% done. They just hadn't, and it's not. I don't think it's going to be a public road. I don't think it'll be just for industrial use only. To get back and forth.
That's my understanding too.
Yeah.
And naturally, each crew member has their own portfolio of research they will conduct.
But yeah, you talked about a couple pieces of news that I think I've been actually meaning to do a video at least once a week, kind of debunking over sensationalized space news articles. And one of them was what did you mention a couple minutes ago?
As mentioned earlier, it's establishing many new.
Well, one of them has to do with the space. So SpaceX did not provide.
Oh, the Army Corps of Engineers.
Yeah, they didn't provide the requested information to the Army Corps of Engineers, which means that the process for them to expand Starbase is now paused. Basically, they would have to start that process over, I think. And I personally think that news article was over sensationalized and taken out of context by a lot of the industry.
You're talking about the Verge article.
Yeah, a bunch of people put out articles, and personally, I think it's more along the lines of, I don't think it was a misstep by SpaceX that they're so wild and out of control that they forgot to submit paperwork. I think it was more along the lines of SpaceX knows that they have to develop the Raptor 2 engines and get them in. They haven't even installed them in any of the potential flight vehicles yet. They haven't done any static fires on the vehicle on them yet. They also know that they have to wait for this FAA approval coming in April, hopefully. I think it was more of along the lines of SpaceX being like, okay, we don't need a second orbital launch pad right now. Let's put this on the back burner and focus on the more important stuff. But everybody, of course, blew that way out of proportion.
Yeah, absolutely. They've, SpaceX is a big company. They got a lot of balls in the air, and sometimes you just have to say, well, we're not going to worry about this one. We have more important things to do. So yeah, I believe it was very I don't want to say clickbaity, but yeah, they blew that out of proportion. SpaceX, I imagine, is they're very well organized. There's very little that gets by them. They have very smart people working there. And so if that happens, it's because at this point they don't have the resources or don't want to put the resources into it, and they can come back to it later. The article did say that the Army Corps did say that all they have to do is provide the required information, and they'll open the application back up.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they knew that, and it's just one of those procedures. They just decided that's what they want to do.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that's. I don't even want to pretend to try to imagine the kind of multi-level management that's going on. Glenn Shotwell's got her hands full at all times.
Absolutely. And then I can't remember what the second article was, but I'm sure it'll come back up.
Well, we occasionally get somebody, some scammer steals, takes and creates a YouTube website about Elon talking about crypto or NFT and so forth. We keep seeing those pop up. In fact, one was on the other day that came up and was saying that, I think the clickbait article was Elon explains why he's not going to space and he's going to shut down SpaceX. So invest now or something like that.
Right.
It was completely didn't even make any sense.
That just reminded me, actually. It was when the SpaceX discontinuing development of new crewed capsules.
Yeah, the Dragon capsule. Yeah.
All of the headlines were SpaceX discontinues crew capsule and stuff like that, to try to get it to look like that SpaceX operations weren't going well and that they weren't going to keep doing crewed missions or whatever. But in reality, these are reusable capsules. They don't need any more. They're developing a new rocket to completely take over as well.
Yeah, exactly. If you had nothing else on the drawing board, stop building rock capsules would be an indication. But since Starship is, Starship, depending on your point of view, is either just on the verge of happening or still years away. And we know, as we've seen with SpaceX, it could be either. it's how things go, and they move very quickly. And they move so quickly, sometimes people can't keep up with it all. And government regulation is when their main barricade right now to a lot of that stuff.
Yep. And if something happens that Starship does look like it's going to be on the longer side of the timeline, then SpaceX can just, if they need another crew capsule, they'll start operations back up on developing another crew capsule.
Well, and that's the thing. If you look at their schedule, their launch cadence and their schedule, and where their capsules go, 4 is actually enough.
Yeah.
Actually, 4 is more than enough because for their crew, their space station crew missions is only 2 a year. It's every 6 months, so that's pretty easy. So that means you got 2 capsules that you can play with other things. Well, now you have Polaris Dawn. We know that's at least 3 flights, 2 of them on Dragons, and the second launch day of the Dragon is TBD, obviously. So yeah, they still have plenty of vehicles to play with. And the next billionaire decides he wants to take him and his friends up for 3 days in space. Why not? And of course, SpaceX is so good at keeping that kind of information out of the public view. I remember back during the last Super Bowl, we're all expecting to hear the next Inspiration 4, as we like to joke, just whatever the next one, and then boom, it's Jared again. Oh, he's going to bottom all up. Okay, well, Jared, thanks a lot. You keeping everybody busy, but Jared's the whole Polaris Dawn. We could spend hours talking about what they're going to do with that. I mean, he's taking it upon himself to help push the technology from the commercial side forward as fast as hard as he can. I would suspect Jared will either be a very big investor in SpaceX or partner, as you might call it, or he might start his own company. He has the resources and he's got the space bug, and
Yeah.
So I'd be willing. I would be imagine he might be one of the first guys, like when they get the first space hotels going.
Oh
He
yeah,
might help push that too.
he's gonna get his hands in all that stuff for sure. I think he's yeah. I think we'll see Jared more and more in space industry, and which should be interesting because he is what CEO of a public company, Shift 4.
Yep.
And it was really cool to see him kind of professionally. You could see the motivation that he had after Inspiration 4, not only for space, but for his other endeavors as well. Like, just shortly after his Inspiration 4 flight, he announced that Shift 4 was going global. He announced all this stuff that, he had bigger, better plans for everything he was doing and everything he was touching. So, yeah, we'll see him get his hands into space hotels and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure of it.
Yeah. And hopefully he's got some friends he can help get involved too. I mean, it's proof that it's a worthy investment. There's tons of money to be made. Like we talked earlier, the door's open now.
Yep.
People need to step in. And it's no longer if or when, it's now.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
It's an exciting time, really, for space. It's kind of crazy how much
Oh, yeah.
is happening. It's nuts.
Well, and from a historical standpoint, you look at all the busy times, the Apollo era. They were launching a 3 to 6 month cadence there because of the launch windows and so forth. They had a pretty good cadence going there.
Right.
And then there was a downtime, and then we had Skylab, and that was exciting for a while. And then we had Apollo Soyuz, and that was it until shuttle came up, and then the shuttle cadence came out and so forth. And as a kid or as a young adult following the shuttle program and getting involved with that was, it was, you talk about, this line keeps coming back up. It's a great time to be alive in the space program. Well, but these new horizons come up and you've got new opportunities. And so, yeah, it's a great time to be alive to see the space program and exploding and stuff. But that's the wonderful thing about it. It's always reinventing itself, being improved. 40 or 50 years from now, we're going to have the first commercial tourist to Mars or something like that.
Yep.
What can you tell us about specialist Mark?
We just heard that about 2 minutes ago they did get the green light to continue forward with hatch closure. So we're at T-minus 2 hours, 2 minutes, and 33 seconds, and things are still going according to plan for this SpaceX Axiom-1 launch, bringing the first ever entirely commercial mission to the ISS. So that's good. That's good news.
Yes, and then it's a good opportunity to talk about not only AX-1, the 4 gentlemen on AX-1, but the future flights, AX-2, which currently, let's see, it's scheduled for, the last I heard was either late this year or early 2023. It currently only has two passengers manifested. Let's look at that again. It's Peggy Winston, another former NASA astronaut, and I believe she was chief of the astronaut office for a while. And then the pilot is a gentleman, John Schaffner. There are 2 empty seats on that flight, and that's unusual.
I know 2 people.
I know 2 people. Me too. It's interesting because a while back we heard the rumors about Tom Cruise and his producer, director, cameraman, whatever, flying, and then everybody's like, no, he's not going. And so then the rumors were that the other 2 seats had been, at least were reserved for Space Hero, the global reality show that was going to be sending the winner to the International Space Station. Of course, they're talking about doing 15 shows over 30 years.
Right.
And then also the other one was the reported Discovery Channel show that unfortunately, since their website's gone away, and the talent agency that was doing the recruiting for it their email has gone radio silence. I reached out to them a couple of times, and I suppose in both those cases, it was probably a funding issue. And so the question, and of course, there's a cutoff. If you back time everything, the training we learned from Inspiration 4 and also from AX-1 that the crew, the window for training for these missions is 6 months. And that's a pretty standard length for training. They've got all the different things you got to do. So if you backtrack that from late 2022 or early 2023, that means it's like June or July that you have to announce the names for that. So if in fact the 2 reality shows that have yet to find their funding, if they were going to be doing a show, let's just pretend for a second somebody's going to do a show and they're going to have a seat on AX2. producing a reality show is actually more difficult than producing just a regular show, in that you've got lead times that require months and months of prep, and then you shoot, and then you have to, if you're doing it live is one thing, or you're doing editing, that's a whole nother bargain. So there's a cutoff point that they'd have to announce the crew members. Well, if you're talking about a reality show running 3 months, 90 days, whatever you want to call it. So that time they would have already started having to shoot. So that means they would have had to have contestants and so forth. So it's pretty obvious at this point that those 2 seats are not going to be used by the reality shows. Some future seats, obviously, they could be available. There's one on Wikipedia, AX4. One of the seats is supposedly Space Heroes Reserve, and that makes more sense. It's a 2023, 2024 window for them. So they would have time to find the funding for that. So something happened a while back. All of a sudden, a media interview between Tom Cruise, and I'm trying to remember the astronaut's name. Yes, he eludes me right now. I can see his face. I'm horrible with names. All of a sudden, Tom Cruise is asking him questions. And I'm thinking, I wonder if somebody's prepping the world for Tom Cruise to actually fly. And of course, then radio silence, we haven't heard anything. And I've not heard anything else, but those 2 seats, like I said, within the next, let's see, we're in mid-April or early April now. I would say in the next 30 days, they've got to start seriously thinking about who they're going to put on there. And I'm sure Axiom has their whole process for picking, because if you go to the website, the Axiom website, it says start your mission, and you click on that and you fill out applications and tell them what you want to do. Now, how many times people have filled that out and can prove their financial responsibility is a whole other story, but I'm sure there's a screening process involved, because just because you have $55 or $60 million doesn't mean they're going to let you fly on there. It's obvious the 3 gentlemen flying with Mike LA have proven themselves, not just with their money, but their actions and the training, that they're serious about going. And when you talk about space tourism and whether you can call somebody who buys their way into a space flight a true astronaut, one of the measures that's come to light to me makes the most sense is an astronaut is somebody who actually does the hard training, puts in the hard work. And if you're spending 6 months to train to the procedures and so forth, you're not just a hunk of meat thrown in a seat. That to me, you deserve to be called an astronaut. To be honest, anybody goes into space and enjoys it, that's fine. You can call them an astronaut. But when you start talking about the people who are serious about it, it's the training, it's the commitment. I know what we've seen with Blue Origin with the New Shepard. That training is, I think, only like a week, or it's about a week, and they bring them down, and that's fine. The training fits the flight. They're only up there for a few minutes, and they just have to be familiar with it and so forth.
Exactly.
But if somebody decides to spend their own money and then commit 6 months of training or more in some cases, you can see right now they're talking about the crew and what the experiments they're going to be doing. That's a pretty big thing. Some of these guys are, they're CEOs and wealthy men, and I'm sure that challenges like this really ignite their imagination, taking their skill set that they have and learning new skills to take that step. That I would love to do something like that. I'm a hands-on kind of guy, doing television engineering and so forth. I've got to get my hands dirty, so something like this would be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like hatch closure is going well so far. Actually, I saw them ratchet it down. What's the word I'm trying to think of? Specific pounds per square inch.
Oh yes. Well, I would assume they would be pressurizing it. I think the cabin. That's something I haven't looked up. The old Apollo command module was pressurized to 5 psi. So I imagine that's kind of the comfortable limit. The shuttle was also pressurized to 5 psi. So they would have to pressurize the cabin temporarily up to above 5 psi so they can look for leak checks. So they have to pump it up, and that's done, I'm sure, done internally, and I believe they still have a connection to one of the small valves in there, and they can look for, they have to pressurize to a certain level, hold it, and watch and see if they have any leaks, and that takes, I think, 20 minutes. That's part of the procedure.
Sounds right. That sounds right.
Research and technology development that we think either plays a role in developing.
Brandon says space makes space cool. I think maybe Brandon meant SpaceX makes space cool, and I would agree. Even the crew bridge looks cool, he says. Absolutely. No, I completely agree. The aesthetics that SpaceX has brought into the industry is honestly just amazing. I mean, you look at the crew tower, you look at the spacesuits, even the design of the interior of the crew vehicle, and then you look at Starship, and they're doing things that look so different from the rest of the industry. And obviously, the way something works is more important than how it looks. But you know, SpaceX is kind of proving that you can do both. So cool
Absolutely,
stuff.
yes. Yeah, that's the Elon touch, and it influences the rest of the industry. Did you see Rocket Lab showed a picture of the next booster, next rocket they're going to fly, and it's the one they're going to try to
Neutron.
catch.
Yep.
And yeah, Neutron, and it's silver. It's highly reflective instead of being
Oh.
black. And I'm sure
You're
they
talking
did
about
that.
the Electron. Yeah.
Electron, yeah, Electron. It's silver, so it's very high reflective. Man, it looks so cool.
It does. It really
awesome.
does.
Yeah. But I'm sure some of it's aesthetic, but I would say that if I'm a helicopter pilot and I'm trying to pick a body that big out of the sky, I'd want it to be as reflective as possible.
Yeah,
to see what's going on.
Absolutely.
But that's another one. I can't wait till they start bringing that to the Florida coast on a more regular basis.
Yep.
Oh, actually, no, they're going to Wallops, aren't they? Going to fly to Wallops?
Yep, and they plan to fly their the Neutron out of Wallops too.
Neutron to Wallops. Yeah, talk about another place to go watch launches. Go watch from Wallops. Poor little Wallops. They don't get the credit they deserve.
Oh, one of my favorite places to watch a launch is down at Wallops. There's one area that you can get to that I'm not gonna ruin it for the rest of us, but it's one of the closest places you can watch a launch from in the country. And it's way closer than the media site. It's amazing. I'll clue you in, but it's not so much a secret anymore as me and Carlos found out last launch. That definitely people are starting to know about it. And hopefully it'll continue to stay open for launches. Plenty of room there.
Yeah, that's why you get a van with a roof platform. You can get up on top and get up on the top of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I got to put that on my list of places to go. I got to stop just thinking Kennedy.
Yeah. Oh man, seeing it in Terry's from that point at Wallops is more impressive than seeing a Falcon 9 from where you can see it in Florida, just because you're so close and the environment is cool.
It's all, when it comes to rocket launches, as far as I'm concerned, it's location.
Yeah.
As close as you are, the better it is. And that's interesting. We're location-wise. I've been reading some stuff about the SLS launch, and of course, the distances that the current setup of where the 39A and 39B are, and where the buildings and where people are, the safety exclusion zone is set at about 3.9 miles. That's the closest you're supposed to get, 4 miles roughly. And the shuttle, 3 main engines, 2 SRBs, that was appropriate. What I've heard, though, is with the SLS, because of the addition of the 4th engine, that exclusion zone may be pushed back, which means some of the areas like the VIP viewing area by the Saturn V at Kennedy, where you pay money to go sit in those plans. That's the best, as far as I'm concerned, it's the best place to watch a launch, unless, of course, you've got a NASA badge and you get a little closer. That potentially could have to be abandoned for the SLS launches, which is a whole shame, because that's one of the things, not only seeing it up close, but when you're that close, a shuttle launch at 3.9 miles, you get that acoustical, you get the sound waves, and you feel it on your chest.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. I was warned about it for my first launch when I got to go watch one like that. I was warned, and I didn't think much of it, but one guy did, when you do it, kind of stick your chest out, then you can feel it against your chest. And the rumble first came up, I'm like, oh wow, this is pretty intense. And it got a little higher, a lot more and more. I'm like, oh my God, this is incredible. So yeah, you can only imagine what an SLS would be at that distance. So we'll have to wait and see if that. I have not heard anything about that since. Maybe because 39B is where it is. Maybe that it puts them farther away from at least the mission launch control and the press dome and those kind of areas.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. But we should be hearing about that type of stuff soon. I would imagine if wet dress rehearsal goes well, I think you'll start to see Kennedy start selling launch tickets pretty dang shortly after that.
The procedure with the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex is once NASA gives their target launch date, they start selling the visitors passes, the Feel the Heat. That's called Feel the Heat.
Right.
I'm giving away, and I'm talking about giving away secrets for watching launches. I think I just gave away the best one at this point. But there's a hazard with buying those tickets. They are kind of pricey at $250 a piece, and they generally don't give refunds. Like, you know, if you plan to go watch a launch, and it scrubs, you're pretty much you're out of luck. And so there's a little bit of a secondary market, which I've had to deal with a couple times, either because I was looking for a ticket or I had a ticket, that kind of thing. But just the other day, I was talking to some folks who had some AX1 tickets who couldn't use them, and I was trying to help them find buyers. And then all of a sudden they said, "Oh no, they're offering refunds." So now they must have established a certain number of days of slip. If the launch slips after a total number of days, a week, 2 week, whatever it is, maybe they'll give refunds. And it just makes more tickets available for people to go there. It's kind of an old, I don't want to say antiquated system. They are using QR codes and stuff like that. But as dynamic as the launches can be, it'd be nice if they could kind of update that one a little bit and figure out a better way to do it so it's not so clumsy.
For a while it was if the scrub happened before you got on the bus, your tickets were good for however many days that happens. But the day that you get on the bus and then it scrubs after you're on the bus, then your tickets are used. That's how it used to work, at least.
That's the way I understood it too. So that doesn't sound like such a good deal, because you went getting on the bus. But they've never had any issues with them, you know, making strict rules. I'm sure it's advantageous to the visitor complex, since it is a for-profit facility, to try to accommodate people for that kind of thing. Because I mean, if you just said, okay, if the tickets are purchased, you can't sell, you can't secondary market them, then and they're paid for, but you end up with bleachers with nobody in them, which is to me a sin as far as I'm concerned. But maybe they're getting more flexible about it too. So, but I was the way these things have been slipping, I was praying for the slip to happen a little more so I could get over to see at least Crew 4. And then, you know, after Crew 4, we weren't going to have no man launches until Crew 5. And then after that, it'll be Polaris, Dawn. Was that late this year, or early tomorrow, or early next year?
I don't remember. I think it was late this year, but I wouldn't be surprised.
So December, January.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I have some time in December and some time in January available to me, so without having to quit my job or take vacation.
Right.
I don't think I haven't thought about quitting.
Well, one good thing about my moving down to Texas is there is one flight out of Harlingen, I think, that goes to Orlando for a decent price sometimes. So
that's right. That's part of the winter tourist flights. Yeah.
Yep. So I'll be able to get over there for launches and stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You don't realize how big the Gulf is until you're down there.
Flying. You're flying over. Yeah, from Houston to Orlando, that's barely 2 hours, maybe less than that. But from Harlingen to Orlando, that's a stretch. It's much
like
more
1,000 miles or something.
Yeah, very much.
I'm pretty much just. I think I found out I'm just as far from Orlando from South Texas as I was from like Massachusetts to Orlando, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Pretty much. Yeah, but at least you got the flight. That's pretty amazing that they would have a flight. I mean, like I said, there's a whole winter Texan industry with airlines, some of the smaller airlines, especially routes, and that to me, that's a fantastic route. I can see people who are like yourself, who are covering the space industry, jumping from a SpaceX launch to a Kennedy launch, or you know, a Boca Chica launch to a Kennedy launch, and getting back and forth. They could probably fill that plane up pretty good. You would probably run into like Tim Dodd and the other guys too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
But yeah, it's a whole new with the creation of all this new commercial space is a whole new creation for people to watch the launches, to get involved, to follow along, and you know, you and I both run and talk to people about going to see launches and try to give them as much information. When I'm volunteering at Space Center Houston, and I start telling people about, you know, this, that, and the other thing, and then we get talking about SpaceX. I tell people, you know, 6 hours south of here is Starbase, where they're building this new rocket. And I've actually had a couple people come back to me and go, "You really mean 6 hours?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, we're kind of loosey goosey on our schedule, we would love to go down there. So I'm giving them all the information to go down there and so forth.
Nice.
I've got to come up with a package I can just hand them, so I don't have to tell them turn left here, turn right here. Actually, it's not that hard. You just drive south until you see the exit 1, I think it is, and you get off on the left. You just drive till you get it. It's actually not that hard to get there.
Yep. The only other thing is keep an eye out for the road closures, but that's about it.
Well, and that's an auto tweet now. You can get that in tweets. I get that one just to see what's going on.
Yep. You can sign up for phone alerts too.
Yeah.
Text messages.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
Though it's not as accurate as you would hope. That sometimes the texts don't come through.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I got to keep that in mind too. So, but yeah, I mean, I've been fortunate since I have family down there. I have an excuse to go down there more often than not. My wife wants to go down this summer to visit her family, and I'm like, oh, I'll go this time. No problem.
Yeah. Come hang out.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll do a stream from my my real studio or something.
Okay. I did notice you guys. There seems to be a real growing clan of space enthusiasts down there with the beach parties and so forth.
Oh, I can't tell you how awesome it is. I cannot tell you how amazing it is. Just being able to sit there with. It's so funny because you don't really realize what's happening until you're there, but it ends up just being all these people that are there to document what's happening at SpaceX for the rest of humanity who can't get there. All of these people are very forward thinking. Some of these people would absolutely jump on a rocket and go to Mars in a heartbeat. And it's just like you get these really diverse group of people that are from completely different walks of life, but have all one common trait of being forward looking and trying to push humanity forward and a love for space. And when you get together, have a fire at the beach, and when you're able to sit there with all these people at the fire while you're watching Starbase, it's unreal. There's no way to explain it. It's just such an amazing experience.
Yeah, I was very jealous when I saw you down there, just getting to talk to people. And that's what's the wonderful thing about the space program. It's not full of fans just from one demographic. It crosses all boundaries, all races, creeds, languages, everything you can think of. I mean, there's people like that, and SpaceX is really, they've redefined so much in our industry and in the world. I mean, not just space, electric cars, batteries, the whole thing. You can argue that Tesla or Elon Musk, Tesla, SpaceX have made more positive impact than any other company in the last 20, 25 years to making Earth a better place to live. And of course, Elon's smart enough to know that we don't want to be a one planet society. We need, for our own well-being, we need to be a two-planet civilization.
Yep.
And so when you see people sharing that whole idea and so forth, it's really encouraging. I mean, that's one of those things. I've moved from being a space enthusiast to a space communicator, and helping spread the word like we all are. And to be able to join those forces, and especially when you start getting stuff a little more, it's not just loose and casual and stuff. When you start getting a little more organized and can start, pinpointing stuff and organize things and help other people and so forth like that. It's really encouraging. I mean, I'm enthusiastic for space every day, but every day I get more enthusiastic because I see more people like us and other groups of people, and it's a wonderful thing. Yeah.
It's great.
Rakia written on it in English, Hebrew, and Arabic.
Oh, that's a cool patch.
One dot up above.
Oh, yeah.
In memory of Elon Ramon.
Even though Israel is a technological country, space is something that ignites a curiosity. It's unreachable. It's far away.
Cool video.
One of my objectives in the mission is to change the sentiment in Israel about human space flight, to inspire
They're
children.
showing some images of some of the astronauts doing VR, the VR lab at JSC. That was a place I spent a lot of time at in the mid '90s. And of course, the technology has got much better, but back then they were large, cumbersome goggles that actually had to have a counterweight on it because they were so big. And now you're seeing they're using off-the-shelf stuff, which is so encouraging.
Yep, it's nuts.
thing in the world. Seeing this literally take off and seeing all the ideas.
So we were talking about the other Axiom flights. Of course, we talked about Axiom-2 and Peggy Winston and John Schaffner being on board, and the mysteries of who's going to be next too. Looking forward to Axiom-3. Yeah, they haven't got any crew yet. And that's like we talked about, is I would love to find out more about the Axiom selection process. Like I said, it's not just a matter of throwing money at somebody or giving them a check and then saying, yeah, I want to fly. And I would imagine there's a whole process of showing commitment, and also obviously a medical, being able to pass medical and so forth.
Right.
But I'm sure Axiom likes to keep that kind of information quiet. And their list of potential commercial astronauts is probably kept very quiet too, because they don't like that additional promotion.
Right.
Kind of like, it's kind of along the lines. Of course, people that can afford that kind of flight are probably good at keeping it under the radar on a regular basis. But I could probably compare it to like winning the lottery. You don't want a lot of people know that you're doing it until you want them to know.
Right. No, absolutely.
Which is funny enough, talking about the lottery, that's one of my plans to get into space.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I would love to be the guy.
Sometimes you gotta get lucky.
Yeah, well, yeah. If I'm like, oh, that's a great line out of Return to Space from Elon. This is the greatest superpower out there is luck. You'd want to be you got to have that. You got to have luck to be the best superhero.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That actually reminds me. I'm going to have to pull up a picture here. I don't know how I'll show stream, but I'll figure it out. So down at Starbase, you meet the wackiest people. You meet great people. Unfortunately, when I was down there last, met a not so great person as well. But anyway, you meet some great person down at Starbase. And so just hanging out down there with the usual crew, and a new face pops up, and a very enthusiastic gentleman by the name of Richard, and he is an artist, and he is down there with his canvas and his paint and his pencils and all that stuff, and we're all just hanging out there waiting to see what's going to happen with Booster 4. At that time, Booster 7 hadn't rolled out yet, I believe. And we're all just sitting there at Starbase, and he's chatting, we're all chatting, and he's drawing at the same time. So at some point, I go over and look at the art that he was working on, and I was like, this is awesome. This is really cool. And I was like, what's your plan for this painting? Are you trying to sell it, or so I talked to him, and I was able to work out a deal with him. So he was finishing up the painting over the last few days. And when I had that conversation with him, the bottom of the canvas was still blank. He said that he might throw a quote in there or something. I had no real idea what he was going to do. And I was just like, it's completely up to you. Use your artistic judgment on it. So I bought it. Sorry, his name is Robert. I said Richard. I met somebody else named Richard. Yeah, I thought it was going to be the perfect art to hang up in my new apartment as the first piece of art I hang on the wall. And then he chose a quote for me. Let's see if I can. I don't know how well this will show up.
Okay.
It looks show up great, but I'll post a picture on Twitter or something. But the quote is, if something is important enough, you should try. And that's a quote from Elon Musk. And I think is perfect for the whole reason why I'm moving down to Texas. You know,
absolutely.
It just all worked. It worked so amazingly. It was just a great experience.
Yeah. Is this the gentleman you had during the live stream, one of the early live the other day?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I remember. Yeah, it was very good artwork. I'm very impressed with this stuff. Yeah, you're right. You're showing a lot of courage in moving down there to do that. But if it's worth doing, you got to try to do it.
Yep.
And by the way, it looks like they opened the hatch up and they're cleaning the seals here. So.
Yep, exactly as described.
Yeah.
But the T-minus countdown is still ticking, so that's a good sign.
Yeah. They could probably work on this. I think tanking is they got to have it done by the T-minus 1 hour mark. I think that's the point they got it stopped.
Yeah, I'd say if they're still tinkering with the door at T-minus 115, that's when I would start to...
Yeah, I get worried.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they won't have the time to tank in time. There's a drop dead time. But they're being meticulous. They want to be perfect about it. So, and they've got enough experience at now. It's, it's not the first time they've had to deal with this hatch. So,
Yeah. This
they'll
is
get it.
exactly what we've seen in the past.
Yeah. Which is interesting. So that hopefully they've got a Tiger team working on a better design for that, or improved materials or whatever it is.
Yep.
I know that on the shuttle era, they had protective material around the seals, because you're climbing in that hatch in those big bulky suits, you're banging into stuff all over the place.
Right, right.
And so you want to protect that. Weather looks like it's still doing well.
Yep. The wind must be pretty calm, at least on the ground level, based on the waves.
Yeah, it's pretty quiet out there. Hey, do you remember which autonomous landing pad are they using for this mission?
It's probably the new one, I would imagine.
Let's see. Shortfall of gravitas. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. And this is booster. Let's see which booster this is. It's 1062, and that's its fifth flight, which is
1062. That was used for I want to make sure I'm right here before I say it. Yeah, this was used for the Resilience launch in Inspiration 4. This was the Inspiration 4 booster.
Okay, that's cool. Well, like NASA's gets to pick their booster, so they want a proven technology. They're a proven booster. I mean, it's really great to look at the way the industry's changed and looked at it. When NASA first signed to do manned launches, they wanted new boosters every time. That was one of their big deals, and of course that would have cost more money. And SpaceX was able to prove to them through just all their sheer amount of engineering data that a proven booster is better.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. If I was gonna ride a rocket at this point, I think I'd rather ride a booster that's flown 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, and even the rockets that were not made to be reusable, like the Saturn V, those engines were fired multiple times before they flew, and so the engine technology is okay that you can do that. So, but that's the rest of the system, the plumbing and the rest of the hardware. Like every other rocket that I'm aware of was always used explosive bolts. Saturn V used explosive bolts to separate the stages. Well, SpaceX uses pneumatic pushers because it's reusable. If you use explosive bolts all the time, it's a mess. You're destroying, blowing things up and things that makes damage and stuff. So that's the strap-on, the side boosters to the Falcon Heavy are pneumatic. And that's one thing that actually Elon was talking about years ago when somebody brought up the concept of the Super Heavy, just put 2 boosters on the side, and everybody thought that would be easy. Well, it turned out to be the hardest thing they could ever do because the systems weren't designed for that. So they had to come with whole new ways of attaching boosters and things like that. And so that's, part of the engineering prowess of SpaceX is they can go and reinvent something that they've perfected and they want to use it for something else. They just figure out a way to do it. In fact, I think they've even taken one of the side boosters and made it a standalone Falcon 9 booster, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
Trying to remember which one that is.
I'm trying to pull up some information here. Have you heard of how Starship does stage separation?
Well, I can tell you because I have the famous black and white picture from when they first stacked Booster 4 and Starship 20. There are essentially tongues or tabs, 3 tabs that they sit in, and I'm betting it's hydraulic. I'll bet you they use hydraulics for the same reason. Knowing how SpaceX works, that just makes the most sense. Hydraulics are reusable and resettable very quickly.
Right, right.
Can be enjoyed as an augmented reality spacewalker that anyone can check out and play with. And here's how it works. I got to play with this a little bit.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that.
Cool. But we have a QR code for everyone at home to scan with your phone, and the spacewalker on your phone that you can play with. You can adjust the scale and position it as you want, rather.
Sidestep. So this is from a Teslarati article, Teslarati.com. Sidestepping decades of precedent, Musk says that Starship will have no separation mechanism at all. This is why I wanted to bring it up. Instead, at some point during the design or testing process, Musk decided that a separation mechanism was entirely, I don't know how to pronounce this word,
superfluous, yes.
And that the same effect could be more or less replicated by using existing systems on the Super Heavy, by using the booster's gimbaling Raptor engines to impart a small but significant rotation on the rocket moments before separation.
Oh, yes. I have heard of this, yeah.
So, does...
Yeah. So essentially what they're going to do is, just at the last possible moment, at booster shutdown, they'll gimbal the engine so much that it'll cause the booster to start to pitch up, but they'll also release Starship at the same time, so it'll pitch up, and the momentum will just carry it away, and it'll also probably impart the turn that they need to do the burn back.
Right. Yeah. Crazy stuff, Starship. It's funny because, like, this thing is so different than everything else that we've seen launch ever. So it's like these simple things that seem so normal as in a normal launch, like stage separation and stuff, that's being done in a completely different way that nobody really knows how it's going to work until we see it happen. It's going to be crazy.
Well, of course, we're not privy to what's going on behind the scenes. I mean, there's so much of what SpaceX they perfect before they even talk about. But that's just the way they do it. And that's, it's interesting, the comparison of SpaceX. Everybody thinks of SpaceX as being so publicly accessible. I mean, we get to see them fail out in the open, not only down at Starship, but also out at McGregor. There were people who, McGregor didn't have as big a following out there, but there were people going out there, and they would crash some things once in a while. But Starbase is one of those, exceptions to the rule where they're doing it in front of everybody, which is incredibly brave.
Yep.
But it's great. I mean, people like yourself and the rest of the space nerd crew, as my wife likes to say, are spending time down there recording history, and it's sometimes history is slow and boring, but then there's those exciting times too, and to be there for that kind of thing and help document it is pretty impressive. I'm constantly jealous of you guys.
Yeah, it hasn't really even fully settled in with me that I'll be down there pretty much full time. So
yeah. So I heard you and Carlos found the best
taco place. Oh yeah. I couldn't tell you the name of it. I'll have to look it up. But oh my goodness, so good. When you come down, we'll have to stop in there.
Okay. Well, I've got a couple places down there that I lived down there for 3 years. Met my wife, got married down there. Actually, used to go there when I was a kid. My grandparents used to live in Mission, which is a little farther west. So a lot of time down there. It's considered my second home down there. So. And boy, when they broke ground down there, I was down there within by 6 months, expecting to see all kinds of buildings. It was nothing, and for many years it was just mosquitoes and signs.
Yep. It took a while, and then you had just Starhopper there for a couple years, and then it actually, I just looked at a tweet somebody sent out a few days ago about what Starbase looked like a year ago, and I forgot that. How much Starbase has changed in a year. The launch tower wasn't even built or anything.
You can even do it in a 6 month or even 3 month increment, especially when they were building the launch tower, the launch platform, and now the fuel farm, the manufacturing area. I do know they're running out of. I heard somebody joking about they're running out of parking spaces for all the unused or leftover boosters and starships.
Yep. There's 3 ships at the Rocket Garden now and 1 booster. There looks like there's a spot next to the booster for another ship or booster, but they actually have to go in there and pour concrete and put in supports in the ground. So yeah, it's getting tight in there.
Well, and I know there have been several communities and people asking if they could have one of them to show off, make their own thing. And that brings up some interesting logistics, because those things are not designed to lay down. So if you're going to have the Starship, I could see they could maybe cradle it and so forth. But the boosters, no way. Those things, if they turn on their side, they're just going to crumble. If you ever anybody gets to go see any of the Saturn V rockets that are on display, they're all laying down. But they have a bunch of, you see all the support structure, the stiffeners to keep them round. And that's one of the things I point out, that the Saturn V is just made out of aircraft aluminum. And if you take those supports off and you lay it on the ground, it's just going to collapse like an empty aluminum can.
Yep.
And same with super heavy. I mean, even probably more because the stainless is, it's designed for rigidity this way and not this way. So, and I'm not sure, do they have to, one of the things with the Saturn V, even though it was laying on a slide, they kept it positive pressure. And I haven't heard if they do that with the, at some point with super heavy, if they pressurize those tanks with like just nitrogen or just air at any point just to keep them stiff or not.
Yeah, they do.
They do?
You'll notice when they depress them because they actually start to dent and buckle a little bit, and then they'll repress them, and then it'll push all those dents out.
Oh, I got you. As they're getting rid of the cryo, they replace it with a nitrogen or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, they have most of the stuff they have there at the launch site is just gaseous hydrogen or liquid nitrogen when they bring it in, and then they turn gaseous on it. So.
Yeah. When I was down there was constant stream of nitrogen coming in from trucks.
It'd be interesting. I haven't heard them talking about generating their own nitrogen. Nitrogen has got to be the easy. Besides getting oxygen out of the atmosphere, extracting nitrogen has to be pretty relatively easy.
Yeah, it's the most abundant, right?
Yeah, exactly. So maybe they're doing it. It's just something that hasn't made the press because it's kind of a utilitarian tool.
Right.
So anyway,
I'm gonna turn stream volume up here. We've got some comms.
Yeah.
All right, there you just heard the completion of the comm checks. Basically, the ground teams, the various leads for the ground systems here, going around and making sure that the communication pathway to the crew is
probably
clear,
continuing the pressure
loud and
test.
clear, as you heard them say. Voices that we heard there included SpaceX Arthur Berrialt, the chief engineer, Bill Gerstenmayer, and just around the horn for.
So we'll see if the crews are able to get off of the crew arm in the next 20 minutes.
Yeah. On the left-hand side of your screen, just a quick check-in. The recheck for that side hatch closure. The recheck for that side hatch closure. So we did attempt to close the side hatch and perform a leak check, and we saw just a very slight loss of pressure during that leak check, so we opened it back up, wiped it down.
Yeah, so the leak check didn't go super well, but that's why they're doing it again. Kind of normal operations again.
Yeah.
Reperforming that leak check, which includes basically getting it up to pressurization or pressure 3 minutes, and then holding it at that pressure for 5 minutes.
I think I will step away just for a minute. Do you want to step away as well, or do you want me to leave you on for a minute?
Go ahead and drop me off. I'll go get myself ready for the day, and I'll be back.
Cool. Sounds good. Yep. So everybody that is watching, just hold tight. We're waiting to get confirmation of a good seal on the hatch here. But we're both just going to step away just for a couple minutes here, and we'll be back with commentary shortly. And I'm going to crank the volume on the stream. So, Andrew, when you come back, if you try to talk, you might be competing with the stream volume, but I should be back in just a couple minutes.
Okay, very good.
Cool.
And it's worth noting, we do build margin into the timeline for this exact reason. If you followed our human spaceflight missions before, sometimes you hear the Corps indicate that we have X amount of minutes of margin. So yeah, for this exact reason, we do build in that margin. And as I said earlier, the countdown itself is what aligns all the various teams working to support the launch on the same timeline. So it's what makes sure that everybody syncs up. And so allowing us to, perform those comm checks while doing the repress and recheck, just making sure that all those teams are continuing to remain aligned.
Yeah. I think during this waiting period too, crews sitting there thinking about not only what do I have to do today, right now, like I'm waking up and I'm getting my suit checked out, there's steps all along the way, and I can only imagine how they're thinking about what their mission is ahead of them, right? All of the work that we've heard that they're trying to accomplish on orbit, their objectives, they're sitting there thinking, how can I be the most effective I can be over the next 8 days, right? And so I'm just thinking about the things that they're bringing up there with them, right? Little mementos that they're bringing up there with them. We heard some interesting things, during their pre-briefing last week. Certain tokens and mementos of home that they're bringing up and what that means to them. That all plays a part of this mission, what kind of keeps them going through these waiting periods, thinking about What am I going to do up there? What does this mean to me? What does it mean to the people back home? And they're just ready to get up there and start working towards those objectives.
So we're continuing to monitor the recheck of that side hatch closure. The team is performing that leak check now. Should be wrapping that up pretty soon. Once we get the leak check confirmed.
Dragon SpaceX, good side hatch leak check.
Good news, Arthur, thanks.
All right, great news there.
Fantastic.
You might have heard some clapping here.
Yeah.
I should mention, John and I here located at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. I actually hear some beeping now. We are a live operations environment here in the rocket factory.
Yep.
So we're 1 hour and 18, just over 1 hour and 18 minutes until launch, and we're starting to see people gather, and really, the excitement is starting to build, and just hearing the confirmation that that leak check was good, that side hatch is going to stay closed. The crew is, I think at that moment, as I mentioned before, the seat rotation, that's an exciting moment because it's like you're locked into the roller coaster, and, here we go. And now hearing that side hatch is good, it's closed, and it's going to remain closed until they splash back down. So when the crew ingresses and egresses from the space station, they will use the forward hatch. So that side hatch now will remain closed until they return to Earth after splashdown.
Right, that's a huge step forward in today's launch. So, in addition to the scope of the science and research and outreach being performed on this mission, AX-1 is also taking some time to better understand the role that food plays on orbit. A partner on this mission and a good friend of Axiom Space is Chef Jose Andres and the team at Think Food Group. Known for his visionary culinary creations and humanitarian efforts, Chef Jose's World Central Kitchen is doing important work helping to feed those who are displaced.
Chef Jose also prepared the meals and snacks accompanying our crew to the ISS. In space, astronauts have limited kitchen equipment and ingredients on hand, so having already prepared meals that are both appetizing and comforting is a great way to feel connected to home.
Right, so joining us now is Chef Charisse Gray, who you saw in that video, Director for Research and Development at Think Food Group. Chef, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Good morning.
Good morning.
Chef, clearly Think Food Group is doing instrumental work in bringing people together with food, and has for a long time. What has been your team's mantra or ethos when it comes to creating these new dishes?
Well, at Think Food Group, our mission is to change the world through the power of food. And that's why we're so incredibly proud to partner with Axiom Space to have created the meals for the AX-1 multinational crew headed to the International Space Station. As Chef Jose Andres often talks about building longer tables, this is such an extraordinary opportunity to do just that, bringing together the hardworking AX-1 crew through food, reaching all the way to space.
So, as a partner on AX-1, the culinary teams at Think Food Group have developed a meal to be shared amongst the crew in space on the space station. What did you put together?
So, the partner on the food mission was born on a friendship between Chef Jose and fellow Spaniard and veteran astronaut Michael Lopez Alegria, the commander of the upcoming mission. And as a result, we really wanted to lean on the flavors and traditional dishes of their native Spain. So we've made secreto de cerdo with pisto, which is a prized cut of Iberico pork with tomatoes, onions, eggplant, and peppers. And the second meal is chicken and mushroom paella. Paella is, Spain's quintessential rice dish, and the AX-1 crew will be able to enjoy also along with that some Spanish jamon, salchichon, and Marcona almonds.
Super cool. Now, can you tell us a little bit more about the significance of those choices?
We wanted to be sure that we created meals that were not only nutrient rich, but satisfying and really delicious. Unlike, traditional ready-to-eat meals that are designed for quick consumption. As chefs, we understand the importance of really, bold and memorable flavors and created food that you'd really want to eat anywhere in the world, or in this case, out of this world.
Exactly right. So what were some of the challenges that you faced in trying to prepare those meals for out of this world?
To make meals that are going to be traveling, for over 250 miles away, and putting in the forefront really crew member safety, they had to be very carefully prepared. And so the AX-1 crew meals were thermostabilized through the retort process.
Now, your teams also put together a set of snacks that the crew is taking with them to enjoy at various points on their journey to the ISS. We were fortunate enough to receive a few of those extra packets, and we'd love to share a snack together with you. What do we have here?
So you're holding one of the pouches of the actual meals. Let me see what you've got there. It looks like you might have got the pesto or the rice.
I think I have the Valencia rice with chicken.
Yes.
And I just spilled it everywhere.
There's the pesto there.
Wow, just immediately the aroma just is strong. It's in a very good way.
Yeah.
It's my mouth is already watering.
Well, and that's
John, what do you have?
Yeah, so I've got the pork stew, and I've got to say the same. The aroma, I think, is really what I would appreciate if I was on orbit and opening this up for the first time. Right? We've heard so much, especially on the crew system side at Axiom, how much aroma plays into, just enjoying your meal, and that can go away during your time on orbit. So I think it's a really important aspect to consider when you're preparing meals.
All right.
Are super important.
I just saw a tweet from SpaceX that the hatch has been sealed successfully.
Excellent. So, yeah, it looked like they had one problem trying to seal the hatch the first time, but they disconnected everything, cleaned up that seal, and they now got a successful seal on the second closure. So that is great news. Which means those crews that are on the crew access arm should be able to depart that area. And then at T-minus 1 hour, which is in 12 minutes from now, I think all the fueling and everything should begin, and I think everything is going according to plan. We should be good for an on-time launch here at 11:17 Eastern Time.
Very good. I unfortunately will have to leave at about quarter to the hour because I have to work, a silly thing called work, and I wish I could hang around, but I'll be watching on my phone. I'm sure I can get a bunch of other people to watch. That's one thing. I work in an industry, high-tech industry, and there's a few people additionally are interested in space, but sometimes you get a live event, you can put it up on the monitors and people love watching that stuff. Cool. And it's an amazing thing to be able to help people, answer their questions. Kids too. That's one of my favorite things now. I keep talking about it, but being a grandfather and so forth. I've got my own grandkids. I'm going to be answering questions for years, but other people's kids come up and ask you questions. I had a young lady the other day was asking me some of the toughest questions about reusability in rockets. And she's like 8.
Nice.
I'm like, good Lord, that was tough. She was tough.
That's funny.
Tough crowd sometimes.
I think you'll. I know you've spent some time at you've seen Starbase and everything, but yeah, I think you would enjoy hanging out there because a lot of times, especially I think even more so over the last 6 months, a lot of people just drive up, and tons of people have questions, and they come up on the dunes and hang out and ask all sorts of fun questions. So
yeah, the last time I was there, I got there like really early. I wanted to be there for sunrise, so I was there for like 4:30 in the morning, and sat on the beach side, and I had tons of people coming up and asking questions. I also had a couple of photographers. I'm sure you've met a whole bunch of the people, Boca Chica Mary and other folks down there. And it's Mary's story is incredible. I think last time I talked to her, she said she had never actually seen a launch, any kind of launch. I said, that's wrong. We got to get you a launch of some sort. Yep. So, but she's so busy down there, she doesn't have time.
She does absolutely incredible work. So, you can see that the time is definitely of the essence down there. But
I don't know if anybody, some people are not aware who Boca Chica Mary is. She was a resident at the small village of Boca Chica, and part of the process of building Starbase was to buy everybody out, buy all the different residents out, if I remember correctly. And and she was the lone holdup. And instead of fighting them, she's stayed there because she has almost unfettered access because she is a resident. So she can be down there when other people can't. And she's turned that around to her advantage to make her, and she learned how to be a photographer too.
Yep. She takes absolutely amazing pictures. She sets up cameras for great video shots. She now does work under the NASA spaceflight team. So you know that they took her on, and she's definitely an awesome and an important part of that NASA spaceflight team.
Yeah.
So cool.
Very cool. Yeah. It looks like they're talking about the Axiom station modules they're going to be putting up, and that's a whole nother day of discussion about how they're going to be the leaders in commercial space station and so forth pretty quick. I think I have to look that up, but I think their first module goes up in 26.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. Let me see here. Axiom Space.
Space station in orbit. That moment where we're
Harmony, yeah, the station. 2020. The first module could be launched in 2024, potentially on the forward port of Harmony. So 2024 looks like the target, and they're doing that all in-house. They're doing the manufacturing themselves. I don't believe they went out to any of the other major aerospace companies like a Boeing or those kind of not USA. You tell them where my head's at. They don't even. USA, United Space Alliance, is a long time ago. But they're also building this. Yeah, they have one of the modules that they're proposing is a super cupola, as I call it, because it's like a multiple pane glass, but big enough that you can float down and multiple people could be inside of it and look out. They keep talking about, they keep using Tom Cruise's name and throwing some of this stuff up about being able to shoot movies in space. But if you're going to shoot a movie in space, you're shooting drama, you're shooting action. A large window is great to look out for Earth views, but it doesn't add to a story that much.
Right.
But you never know.
It would be cool. But a lot of CGI can do the same.
Yeah, it's cheaper, way cheaper.
Yeah.
But and the Russians they beat everybody to the punch about shooting a movie in space. Was it last year or early this year? I can't remember. And I've not heard anything since then. I wonder if the movie's actually been finished or not. I think it'd be a good question to find out.
Yeah. I want to say that was. Yeah, I don't know. That was either just at the end of last year or just at the beginning of this year. So. Still probably early for all that footage to be put together, and I'm sure they got other shots to be done on ground here. But yeah, I'll be curious to see if and when that releases and how people's reactions will be to it as well. So
yeah, I mean we've had plenty of really cool documentaries about the ISS, which is great, but to actually shoot something dramatic. The Challenge, that's what it was called, The Challenge.
The Challenge, yep.
Yeah, it's actually about, it tells a story of a doctor launched on a short notice to an International Space Station to save the life of a cosmonaut. They actually borrowed that premise from the $6 Million Man.
Oh, really?
That there was an episode where an astronaut on the Skylab space station becomes ill and he's too sick to move, and so they have to send a doctor up, and it turns out the doctor was played by Farrah Fawcett, Lee Major's wife at the time. And it was actually very inspiring. They actually got a lot of NASA hardware to do it. And of course, the drama was that Steve, being the super astronaut, was able to get her up there quickly. And then something they hadn't predicted, I think it was his bionic implants were affected by solar radiation. And so he had problems. So Farrah Fawcett's character, the doctor, had to actually save him and get him all back to space. And of course, it ended all happily ever after.
Right.
Yeah. So The Challenge. Let's see if there's a release date on it. October.
Okay.
Yeah, it was back in October. I'll have to look it up. The channel. I'll have to go to IMDb. I wonder if it even has an IMDb at this point. Did you I was gonna say, anybody else ever watch The Sixth Million Dollar Man? It was a big deal when I was a kid.
I haven't.
Oh, okay. It's a pretty cool show.
I'll definitely check it out.
I'm sure it's streaming somewhere. Well, there's plenty of movies called The Challenge. So at this point, it's tough to see. Anyway, okay. Yeah, but I'm sure there'll be some media attention when that comes out, being it's the first movie shot on the space station. There we go.
Yeah, definitely. That would be cool.
Yeah. Oh, it looks like they're looking at showing off their memorabilia they'll be taking in space with them.
No dream beyond reach.
Yeah. Very cool.
We're very quickly approaching this T-minus 1 hour mark, which is good. The clock continues to count down towards T0. T0 is currently scheduled for 11:17 Eastern Time. I do believe this is an instantaneous launch window, so I don't believe there's any additional time built into the countdown if there's any holds that are unexpected. So I think we should see fueling start in the next few minutes here. Actually, John's just talking, so let's get an update.
Well, out at Pad 39A for the Axiom-1 mission flight to the International Space Station. Right now, Falcon 9 team is in the middle of the fuel bleed through the Merlin engines. That's going well. We've also done checkouts on the first and second stages. We're doing some final data checks. That's also looking good. Up on the Dragon capsule, you can see the crew access arm. The seal from the White Room has actually been deflated. You can see it's pulled away a little bit. We're getting ready for the advanced team to leave the pad at about T-minus 1 hour. So they're on track right now to close out. We did have a good side hatch leak check. And so we're doing just the very last steps to get the capsule ready for flight and then leave the pad. And of course, in the background, as you can see on the monitors or on your screens, it's blue skies over Kennedy Space Center, Pad 39A. Weather's looking good, both in the local area, as well as when we head northeast towards the space station, the ascent trajectory looks good. So at T-minus 1 hour and 2 minutes, all systems are go. Weather's looking
awesome.
Good, local area,
yeah.
As well as when we head northeast towards the space station, the ascent trajectory looks good. So at T-minus 1 hour and 2 minutes, all systems are go.
Excellent.
That's all good news. That's all good news.
Yep. This should be a beautiful launch today.
Yep. So we should see those, I guess they call them the advanced teams, moving out of that crew access arm here in the next minute. And then obviously we'll see fueling. Eventually we'll see that crew access arm actually what's the word? Pull back from
back, yeah.
Rotate back from the launch vehicle, giving it clearance for launch, and the last hour of a countdown usually goes by quick because there's a lot of updates from teams, and you start to see the venting and things start to get exciting. So we're quickly approaching that exciting time here.
Something about the manned flights of the Falcon 9 versus the unmanned flights is the additional time, obviously, for the countdown to put him in and so forth. And it makes the unmanned flights so, I don't want to say unexciting, because they're always exciting, but routine, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And over history of like the shuttle program was a perfect example where there were elements of NASA that, and everybody wanted the shuttle missions to be routine. That was the promise. Shuttle was going to be a routine. They originally talked about 100 flights a year. and getting them routine, and obviously routine can mean many things to many people, but the quick and assured access to low Earth orbit was really what they were talking about. And of course, then we had the Challenger accident and the Columbia accident, and that kind of made the whole idea about routine not as palatable, because space is hard, as we know, and space is dangerous, and keeping that in mind from disaster to disaster is very important. If you look at the Apollo 1 fire to the Challenger accident to the Columbia accident, those are all generational. There's at least a generation's skip, and so NASA would learn a lesson from, say, the Apollo 1 fire, and then a new group of people and new generation comes in, and then it's all mostly management at that point as change out, and they have never learned that lesson. And in fact, in the documentary Return to Space, there's even a discussion about that, is that we need to carry that lesson over. It needs to be taught. It needs to be ingrained in everybody so that kind of thing doesn't happen. And I think SpaceX, because they are an single company with a single vision, or at least the ability to control the vision, it's not like NASA, which is, unfortunately, as a government agency, is actually fragmented by centers. Each center has their own thing they do. And so there's the flow of knowledge is kind of compartmentalized. And so lessons like that, well, you can talk about them in a much broader sense. Sometimes they're lost on people coming up through management and end up in positions to make decisions that will eventually cause those kind of things.
Right.
But SpaceX, being, like I said, they're an individual company, and they can hammer home those lessons. You know, I would imagine if you're working in the manned side, the manned space flight side of SpaceX, they talk about that a lot. At least I hope they talk about a lot. And seeing Elon's reaction sometimes to some of those questions about that tells me that at least in his heart, he's very conscious of that. He takes that very seriously. And you know, you say space is hard, and people are going to make mistakes, but they've learned to make their mistakes early on, and to make sure nothing bad happens to the crew. Yeah, I mean, and the politics involved, that the first time there's a commercial a flight with that, and there's a loss of life, or there's a near loss of life on a board or something like that, people will be all over them. Especially even when you talk about a true private flight, this is a true private flight. There is no, well, I should back that up. There is a bit of NASA involved. This because they're going to the International Space Station. The Inspiration 4 was the first true non-governmental involved in any way, shape, or form. So if there'd been a problem on that flight, that would have all fallen probably to the FAA and so forth like that, you know, for an investigation and so forth. But anytime NASA gets involved, they're involved. NASA isn't just a little bit involved; they're always involved. Anything they're involved with, they're involved wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
So
even if you know, even if something had happened for Inspiration 4, I'm sure NASA would be just as involved, because it's also their ride to space too. So
exactly, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But there was actually, I just saw an article yesterday, was it, that the NTSB inserted language into one of their rules. I'm not sure whether it was a website rule or that claimed that they were the lead agency for any spacecraft incident, mishap, or whatever, anomaly. And everybody's like, well, wait a minute, that's supposed to be the FAA. That's already actually written into law. And it was reported as some kind of power grab by somebody at the NTSB was trying to insert themselves into the space industry. And the last thing we need right now is more extra levels of government oversight beyond what is needed. And because, you know, obviously getting commercial flight up and running and getting the cadence they need to make it profitable will require the government to start looking at space flight in a different fashion as far as giving permits and so forth. It's got to become more, I don't say automatic, and automated is not the right word, but a lot more streamlined. Because we know how Elon and the FAA get along.
Yeah. Yep. It's interesting to see kind of how all of that has changed and will change over the next couple of years. Like I know, if we had this conversation last week, I could have told you the name of it, but there's that new process that kind of streamlines new launch companies launching from new launch pads. Like Astra used this for their first Cape Canaveral launch, and it did accelerate their ability to get licenses to launch from Cape Canaveral. So at least there's some momentum or some indication that these government organizations are gonna try to help change processes to be more efficient.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
Well, that's great. That's fantastic. We need more of that to make it more attractive to other companies, because there's right now in the space launch industry, there's the big guys and the little guys, and
Yes.
like the Amazon deal basically took all the rides for the larger payloads. So who's left? And so people are going to be having to wait to launch their larger satellites, while the small sat industry side is growing pretty quick. And
very quick.
And that's interesting that when you start talking about the hardware you want to send to space, do things to do science or whatever, Earth ops, whatever. People are realizing they don't need the big bus-sized satellites. You can shrink stuff down into CubeSats and things like that, and they're becoming more popular. So that's why the small sat industry is growing so quickly, and that's great, because the smaller satellites means it's cheaper. They do instead of doing 1 or 2 satellites, they can do what they call swarms, where you have like 20 or 30 of them, and they work together and so forth, and you get better coverage. I remember reading about one company that was working on their plan was to have instant real-time video from anywhere on the planet at any given time with a swarm of satellites.
Wow.
And they didn't talk about resolution, how good a resolution, but that's
resolution should be good. Bandwidth is generally pretty good there, but the instant part is hard. Obviously, you're limited by the speed of light, literally. So
instant, I mean, in the sense that you don't have to wait for something to pass over something, because I'm sure the military or the NSA or something like that would love to have something like that, because they have their large keyhole satellites that they only have a couple of them, so they have to wait for it to get over a certain area. But if you have instantaneous, when I say instant, just being okay, we need to see what's going on in Central Europe. They can go click it in and then start looking at it, that kind of thing.
Yep. No, that's absolutely doable, and I think the bandwidth for resolution it's easy. I think at this point, Starlink has showed that bandwidth isn't a problem at all. It's the only problem is latency.
Yeah, and if you start getting into low Earth orbit, like lower Earth orbits that like Starlink and Kuiper and OneWeb were using, now then you have the whole argument about clogging up low Earth orbit and so forth. But SpaceX has proven you can do it responsibly, and get the dead satellites down pretty quick.
Yep. I think this is this is a conversation we'll definitely have many times over the course of the next few years, and with the more constellations, the more we'll talk about it. And I think there will be I'm sure there will be a percentage of satellites that don't succeed, and then they won't be able to deorbit successfully. But the good thing about being in an extremely low Earth orbit is they will degrade pretty quickly anyway.
Yeah, pretty quickly.
I think with Starlink, they have to replace the satellites every couple years, right? Because they only last that long.
Yeah, the whole process of building the Starlink constellation is continuous. I mean, it's not like they're going to have to keep the same launch cadence up, but they will be losing satellites. And they're also, with technology improving and so forth, you want to, take advantage of new hardware, new software, that kind of stuff. The laser communication is the real game changer there, being able to communicate from satellite to satellite via laser, as opposed to having to use ground station, which allows you to then offer service where there are no ground stations. They can only, at this point, the older system, the original versions were limited by ground stations. So that's very costly. And then you've got politics involved with that. Some countries don't want to have ground stations in there. And so you can bypass it that way too.
Yep. I think that helps with latency as well, actually.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Laser is much faster.
Yep. T-minus 50 minutes. Not bad.
Good. I'm getting some messages in here from people. Somebody just sent me a text that says "Great launch day," but I have no idea who sent it.
Nice.
I must have fans somewhere.
That's funny.
Yeah. So yeah, the one thing I know, people have been one of the most prevalent questions I've been getting lately is people talking about the Russian, all the bluster about leaving the space station, taking their space station and going home, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is that the Russian segment could not operate successfully by itself. They would need additional solar panels and some moving fuel.
Yep.
And so I like to tell people, well, don't worry. The smart people are running the show on the space station, not the politicians. So it's not too much of a worry about that. But there will be a point in the next 8 years that when they do take the space station and deorbit it, it's going to be as planned as they can. And they've learned a lot. And they remember learning a lot of lessons from the Skylab, and also when they deorbited Mir.
Yeah.
So it'll be a controlled reentry over the Pacific at some point. But it should be pretty spectacular, because something that big, I would have thought they would have tried to break it up into smaller pieces, but that's obviously going to be a little more difficult. In theory, you could do it with cargo craft to take one module, last guy out, close the door kind of thing.
Yeah.
But we'll see how that goes. But it'll be a sad day, because the ISS, I was there when they were building it, the different modules. I got to take tours in Moscow, at Khrushchev, and in LA, and different facilities. We would go document that information. Now, it was interesting when we would go see a US segment being built. It would be in this clean room where you have to wear the bunny suit, you have to go through the process, and it was all controlled access. So when they did let us in to shoot, it was just the videographer, nobody else was allowed in. You had to clean your camera and put on the bunny suit and go through the shakers and all that stuff. We were at Khrushchev in Moscow, and just basically anybody standing around there out on the factory floor, and they said, "You want to shoot inside?" And we said, "Sure." And so we just kind of scooted down the pad and climbed in there with a camera and started shooting. It was, it was basically just a framework at the time, and there was little body panels or floor panels and stuff like that, and they were running wiring. It was pretty early on in the construction phase. So, but they tell people, I got to crawl around in the Zvezda and the Zarya before they close them up. So yeah, the contrast between the two programs, essentially, that's just how it worked.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's really interesting to see how it's been working so great over the last 20 years. There's been hiccups here and there, but all together, it's been working really well. The modules work great together. And even with major procedural differences between the two, it's kind of cool.
Yeah, and it's really great to look back on it. And also, I like to tell people that was a woman who actually remembered the Apollo-Soyuz test project. That's a very not well-known mission that NASA and the Soviet Union, Russian Space Agency at the time, I actually don't think it had a name. I think it was just the Soviet Union Space Agency, whatever. They pulled that off, and that is the basis that started everything else. The people who were involved with that, it was all about getting the contacts between those people, the people on our side and the people on their side, and that led to eventually to the Shuttle Mir program, which allowed the space shuttle to dock with the Mir space station, and that proved we could do it. So that became the next best thing, was then to the International Space Station, bring them in as partners, use them as the core modules and so forth, because the Russian space program has so many firsts and so much great knowledge that could only benefit anybody else's program.
Right.
And so that was why one of the reasons they were brought in. People were like, well, they're our enemies. Well, they weren't our enemies. They were adversaries until the Cold War ended, and then they were partners. And now, of course, the politics has changed, but the relationships and the working groups that have been put together will survive this.
Yes.
It's just the way it is. And people are asking me, well, can't we just kick them out? I'm going, no, they're part of an international cooperative. We're not supposed to kick them out. It's part of playing nice. You have to play nice as long as you can, because NASA is more concerned about other things in the future, and we should all be concerned about that too.
Yep. No, I think it's important to there's no easy way to explain it, but politics are politics. Things that happen on the planet between countries is one thing, but trying to advance our species, regardless of where you're from, is even more important. And I think so. I think you stated that the Russian modules necessarily couldn't survive without the U.S. modules, and I think the same is vice versa. I don't think the U.S. modules would survive without the Russian modules.
Yeah.
So
The only thing the Russian modules are providing at this point is reboost capability, and that's really not even the modules. It's the Soyuz, not the Soyuz, the Progress resupply vehicle. I think the Soyuz manned vehicles can also do it, but generally they use the Progress vehicles for reboost, but the resupply vehicles launches out of Wallops. What's that one?
Cygnus.
Cygnus actually has the capability built into it now, and Elon Musk has said that Dragon can do that also.
Interesting.
Looks like the crew access arm is rolling back now.
Yeah, that is a great sign. So the crews that were in there working earlier have definitely been able to get out of the pad. This should be a great indication that fueling should be started, and I bet you in the next few minutes here we'll start to see some vapors coming off of this rocket to indicate that fueling is happening and fuel will be boiling off and all that good stuff.
Yeah, excellent. I'm looking at Twitter to see if there's been any updates.
That's one thing I'll have figured out for the next stream, so we'll be able to bring up stuff on screen to look at
Twitter.
Yeah,
that'd be good because it keep us from having to look away from the screen too much. Oh wow, I'm getting nervous and excited. I wish I was down there.
I know.
Yeah, I've made several friends who live in the Orlando area and have most of their lives, and a launch to them is just like it happens. It's like living in New York City and you have bus accidents or something like that. But I can't be that way. I can't get that blasé about.
Yeah, I'm with you on
about that kind of thing. Yeah, it's just too big of a deal.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Sure if I'm yawning, but I had a long travel day yesterday. Got up at like 3 a.m. and then today I ended up
it's
getting
all
up
good.
at 2 a.m.
I
definitely going to bed early
too.
Yep. Yeah.
I can't wait to go to bed tonight.
Yeah. Let's hope they get this thing off so we have to get up again.
Yeah. Yeah, true. But that's all right. I think a lot of the stuff that gave me a crazy week over the last week, I've been able to wrap up. So I think even if I have to wake up early tomorrow morning, I'll still be able to go to bed early tonight.
Yeah.
So
yeah, definitely.
I wasn't sure if I was going to get the stream up working in time, but I think we just in time. I think had a lot of technical issues this morning, and even so, for some reason I can't zoom my camera in, so that's why I'm so zoomed out right now. But
is that what it was? I thought you were just trying to not show your scruffy beard or something.
Oh my goodness, I can't wait to get a haircut. Being down in Texas for a couple weeks, I never got one.
Yeah.
And I'm very
that's the reason I wear my hair so short now. It's just the hot Houston weather.
Yeah.
Even in the summer, even the winter, I just keep it short just because it's more convenient.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's see.
I've been thinking about what I'm gonna do for my backdrop in my studio in Texas. I definitely want. I don't know. I want it to look good. I don't necessarily love having a couch behind me in this shot. So I don't know. I got some thoughts. I got some thoughts.
Green screen maybe, or you're just gonna have a fixed.
I don't think I'll do the green screen route, but I do have an idea that I don't want to give away on stream.
Okay.
That incorporates a green screen into a small portion of the background.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you're delving into my world with the old chroma keys.
Yep.
The old chroma key.
But I don't know. I'll probably I got this LED neon sign. I'll probably put that behind me. I was thinking about maybe just even building a backdrop and basically just have some dark grays and then some pops of color to just give it a clean background. But we'll see.
Yeah, that should be cool.
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing it. And your time frame for getting down to Brownsville is?
I will be in my new apartment on the 27th of April.
Okay.
So I'll probably have my studio at least started by, I don't know, the end of the first week in May. I'm sure I'll do some streams down there, even if when it's not completed.
Yeah. Yeah, you need to do one. You need to do one with sawhorses and 2x4s and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. That'd be cool.
All right. So if you're driving down, right, you're moving your furniture and things.
Yep.
Okay. You definitely got to stop in Houston. I've got a tent for you, a pop-up tent you can use when you're out in that hot Texas sun.
I actually found out that I have one in my garage.
Oh, you do? Cool.
Yeah. So I might just bring that one down. But I mean, if I'm coming through Houston, I'll definitely stop by. We'll get some chicken fajitas or something.
Yeah.
we might be going the Austin route, but I'll keep you updated.
Okay.
All right, there you heard it. The launch escape system is now armed.
Launch escape system is armed.
Yep.
Visors down.
Visors are down.
Is the first of its kind escape system. It provides escape capability all the way to orbit. It's a really important function to have. Obviously, no. But that's what those call-outs were there, back and forth that we just heard.
Nice.
Right. And as we heard earlier, too, from Administrator Bill Nelson, the importance of low Earth orbit. So speaking of just how valuable low Earth orbit is, the crew of X-1 will be conducting a tremendous amount of science.
Where's this audio coming from? Oh, I think I can hear the stream from your side, but it doesn't sound like it's coming from yours. No, it's fine, actually. But
let me just mute it.
It's funny because I don't think it was coming through your mic. I think it was your actual desktop audio.
Yeah, probably so. Yeah, I'll keep that down.
All good.
Yeah, the delay is still something trying to deal with.
Gotcha.
Yeah, making sure I don't pick my nose at the wrong moment and so forth. Yeah, we've seen way too many people in front of the camera not remember they're on camera.
Yep. Yeah, the first few times I streamed, I was like way like overthinking, being like, yeah, I'm just gonna get casual and start pick my nose or doing something funny, but you get used to it being on camera pretty quickly, I think.
Yeah.
But it's also the internet. Sorts of clips of people doing dumb stuff on camera when they're forgetting they're on camera.
Yeah, no kidding. Let's see here. Maybe I can do this. I've got my hearing aid in my left ear, so maybe I can do that so I can hear the stream. There we go. Mission live. There we go. There it is. Okay.
Cool. So you can hear the stream now?
Yeah, I got the stream in my hearing aid on my left ear up through my phone. Yeah.
Very good.
Get a lot of family members going, "Hey, you're on TV."
Well, we appreciate everybody watching. It's a good time, actually. If you're just tuning in, we are at T-minus 36 minutes and 37 seconds prior to SpaceX launching the first ever entirely commercial mission to the ISS. So this group of astronauts is sitting in their capsule on top of the Falcon 9 rocket right now, just over a half hour away from launch. They should go up to the ISS and spend some time up there. We're really excited for launch today. Weather's looking good. So far, there's been no technical issues that the teams have mentioned. And we're just hanging out here talking space while we're waiting for this thing to light. We obviously thank you, Andrew, again for coming on. And we're having a great stream so far.
Yeah, I enjoy doing it. It helps me keep my nervous energy down here. So. Yeah, the flight, it's tough. Sometimes people ask how long they're going to be up there. It's a 10-day flight, but technically they're on the space station for 8 days. And people don't realize that NASA is actually charging Axiom for that. That's where the Axiom doesn't keep, Axiom's got to pay, obviously, SpaceX for the seats, but then they also have to pay for the time. And there's actually I don't want to say catalog, that's the wrong word. There's actually a rate book available from on the NASA website that tells you how much it costs per hour to do certain things on the space station. Like I think they broke it down to like the amount of 1 day's worth of water consumption per astronaut. They have a fixed amount for that. Then they have a cost of the oxygen they'll take, and then also bathroom time and power and things like that. And that's how they calculate how much to charge the commercial partners. And that's something, anytime you start doing stuff, commercial kind of thing, you've got to have a rate card. You've got to tell people how much it's going to cost. And so somebody went down and broke it all down. So Axiom has to pay NASA for the time on the space station. Axiom also has to pay SpaceX for the launch services. So, and it's one of those things, there's no published price for the flights on these Axiom flights, and I'm sure they want to keep that, but the rumor is between $55 and $60 million. I'd be willing to bet it's a little more than that, only because of, like SpaceX just raised their prices on their launches too. Some of their base launch prices went up because of inflation, and same with Starlink, the Starlink terminals. I mean, they're seeing all the cost increases there, so. But you win that lottery and $100 million, that should be enough to get you on this 8-day flight to the space station.
It's funny that you mentioned the cost breakdown and everything. It's these types of things that people don't necessarily think about when they think about space flight. And it's like you have all these very specific agreements that you have to make for cost for this, cost for that. I was involved shortly on this project that I can't really talk much about, but I can tell you that I had to dig into the handbook and the user guide for the IONET for the network downlink from ISS to back to Earth, and it's just it's like a user agreement for anything else. It's like you can't do VoIP calls on this, or you can't use this for that. It's funny. It's all this mundane. It's like a network at a school. You have all the same stuff you gotta do. It's really funny. Yeah. I'm gonna turn my heat up. It's cold.
All right, I'm gonna have to step off. I'm getting cold. I have to meet my coworkers to go to work. So I want to thank you for having me on today, and I will continue watching and listening into the stream. And go AX1.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you so much for joining. I don't know if you want to direct anybody to an account that you have or anything, or
I'm AParisX on Instagram, AParisX on Twitter, and AOParisX on Instagram.
Awesome. If you have a second, if you just want to put that in the chat as well.
Sure, we'll do that right now before I leave here.
But yeah, thank you so much for joining. I really enjoy these conversations that we have. I figure I love to have guests on for these big, crewed missions and all these exciting streams that we got going on. So, your company and conversation is very much appreciated, and I really think people enjoy it. So thank you.
Thank you very much, and I will see you on the next stream. I'll talk to you later.
Sounds good. See you later.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
See ya. All right. So, we are T-minus 31 minutes from launch of Axiom-1, or AX-1 as it is also called. We're waiting to see these astronauts lift off the pad and go up to orbit, and eventually we'll see them dock with the International Space Station. Not on this stream, but that is the plan for this crew. Bear with me for a couple moments here where I'm just going to kind of readjust the stream here to work a little bit better. Now that it's just me, we'll get some desktop audio going here.
Loading is underway on both the first and second stages. Now we'll finish up fuel loading on the second stage at about T-minus 20 minutes. Doesn't take very long. And then we'll begin loading liquid oxygen on the second stage at about T-minus 16 and a half minutes.
Okay. Now I got the stream set up so I can easily adjust between my audio and the desktop audio, which you will hear the SpaceX stream in. So we're hearing from teams that the propellant loading is going well. It is going successfully. We should start to see venting from the rocket any moment now, which is always a great indication that things are going well.
For the fuel, we use monomethylhydrazine, or MMH, and nitrogen tetroxide, or NTO, for oxidizer. Now together, these propellants feed the Draco engines that will maneuver Dragon on orbit, changing its attitude, raising its orbit to get to the space station. But that propellant also serves a second purpose, and that would be to use in the 8 Super Draco engines that would power the launch escape system in an escape scenario.
30 minutes.
Now on pad 39A, nice view of Falcon 9 with Dragon there. You can see the crew access arm has retracted away from the Dragon spacecraft.
Sounds like they're doing some
The 4-person crew is inside Dragon right.
Got some construction going out in the street. I don't know if y'all can hear that, but I don't think it'll be too bad.
So since we are at this stage with launch escape system arm, that means the 8 Super Draco engines inside the Crew Dragon are ready, if needed, to launch the capsule away from the Falcon 9 rocket in an instant, should there be any kind of emergency associated with the rocket or the pad. We have the ability to use a launch escape system right now if it was needed. A couple other status items. Weather, as you can see, looks good. Probability of violating the launch commit criteria is...
Weather's looking good. Definitely a little bit of wind going on there, but nothing that the teams have mentioned any concern about so far. We can see that the crew access arm has been rotated back off of the vehicle, giving plenty of room for the rocket to lift off here in 28 minutes. That transporter erector is still attached to the vehicle, of course. That is the that big truss structure you see attached. From another angle, you can see it better, but that is the structure that delivers the tubes, the pipes, the cords, the cables, everything to deliver what the vehicle needs during the countdown. So we're talking electricity, we're talking fuel. You can see the umbilicals connected to the Dragon capsule right there on the bottom right of the capsule. So shortly before launch, the vehicle does switch over to battery power, and these umbilicals disconnect just a few seconds prior to launch, and then that transporter erector will drop away from the rocket and give it clearance for launch.
Spacecraft on top together stands about 215 feet, which is almost 30 feet taller than the Leaning Tower of Pisa in Italy, which is 183 feet. Falcon 9 is a reusable 2-stage liquid-fueled rocket, which means that it's kind of like 2 rockets in one, the first stage and the second stage.
Very cool. So talking a bit about that first stage. The first stage is the bottom 2/3 of the vehicle that you see there. Has that nice patina. It's been reused a little bit. It's covered in soot from a previous mission. That first stage is responsible for accelerating Falcon and Dragon through the Earth's atmosphere and into space. To do that, it has 9 Merlin engines at the bottom of that first stage. Prior to liftoff, the Falcon 9 first stage is loaded up with nearly 1 million pounds of fuel and liquid oxygen. And the Merlin engines on the first stage are optimized for sea level. These achieve 190,000 pounds of thrust during ascent and descent. The first stage accelerates the vehicle through the Earth's atmosphere into space and then separates the rest of the rocket at about 2.5 minutes.
Okay, so we're actually starting to see some of that venting now. Oh, we have a live view from the drone ship. So, of course, this booster that has been used multiple times now will attempt to be recovered. It will land on this drone ship. SpaceX will then take it back to Cape Canaveral for refurbishment, and they'll use it again for a future launch. But this is the platform that they plan to land the rocket on. This is out in the ocean. You can see the waves, and it looks like it might be a bumpy landing here today, but nothing that SpaceX hasn't dealt with before. Looks like some pretty quick upper level winds. If what I'm seeing here is a contrail from a jet, and that is buzzing across the sky pretty good there. So teams haven't indicated any concerns with upper level winds or anything, so it's probably within the safe zone, but definitely looks like some wind.
The second stage is specifically designed to operate in the vacuum of space. The second stage powers the Dragon spacecraft to its specific targeted drop-off point in orbit.
The Dragon spacecraft is capable of carrying up to 7 passengers to and from Earth orbit and beyond. But for today's mission, it is carrying 4 members of the...
That was an interesting designation there. To Earth orbit and beyond. Interesting that they say that. The Dragon capsule is quite larger than it looks on video. So it looks surprising that it can fit 7, and 7 would be tight, but it's a pretty big vehicle, and it really doesn't do it justice on video here.
First human spaceflight mission. Pretty.
Oh yeah, so what I was saying, we can start to see some venting, or more accurately on the bottom of this, we see some vapor coming off the side. Of course, these are super chilled propellants, and sometimes at the top, we'll see that venting from that fuel boiling off. This fuel is always boiling off, and they're always topping it off. We're gonna listen in for some timeline updates here about what we're gonna see after launch.
Into flight, Falcon 9's engines will throttle down to help pass through the period of maximum dynamic pressure on the rocket, or what we typically refer to as max Q. It's worth noting that once we hit max Q, the vehicle will be going supersonic.
Once we're through the period of maximum dynamic pressure, we can throttle up our Merlin engines again. From there, at about 2.5 minutes into flight, we have a series of 3 events that happen in rapid succession. The first of which is MECO, or main engine cutoff. This is where all 9 Merlin engines shut off in preparation for stage separation, which, as the name suggests, that is where the first stage detaches from the second stage, with the first stage making its way back to Earth for landing as the second stage continues on its journey with the third event.
Right, now SES-1, or Second Engine Start 1, is where the Merlin vacuum engine lights up and propels the second stage, along with our AX-1 crew, into orbit. As Stage 2 heads towards its targeted drop-off orbit, Stage 1 will execute 2 burns in order to make its way back to Earth. The first stage is the entry burn, where 3 of the Merlin 1D engines will reignite and then shut down. This helps to slow the stage down in preparation for entry back into Earth's atmosphere.
While the first stage is heading back to Earth, the second...
As we continue to get closer to T-0, you will continue to see this this vehicle venting from more places. You'll see more venting from more middle of the vehicle towards the bottom of the vehicle. And generally speaking, depending on the weather, right before this thing takes off, it's usually kind of covered in different what looks like white smoke, but just vapor. You can see that venting coming from the middle of the vehicle right now.
The second stage. At about 3 minutes after the second stage gets into orbit, we should have a great view of Dragon with its 4-person crew drifting away from the second stage. Now, once Dragon is a short distance away, it will begin checking out its Draco maneuvering thrusters to make sure Dragon continues to increase separation distance from the second stage.
And lastly, the nose cone deploy sequence will initiate just before T+12 minutes and finish around T+15 minutes. And this sequence will expose Dragon's docking mechanism in advance of its arrival at the International Space Station. So, as you can tell, it's a pretty jam-packed 12 minutes.
Yeah, pay attention. Pay close attention to what you're listening to.
Don't blink. With all of that in mind, let's head back over to Dan Hewitt for an update from the ISS team over at Johnson Space Center. Dan?
So we've heard all good things about the countdown. We are T-minus 21 minutes and 35 seconds until launch. Everything is looking good, weather's looking good, vehicle's looking good. No concerns with range as of yet, but of course there will be a check of the immediate area around the launch site to make sure that there's no boats or anything in the water in that danger zone. So we'll hear more about that. And then we heard that all of the big events happen within 15 minutes after launch. So if we're 21 minutes, yeah, we'll call it 20 minutes out, we should be in orbit with all of the major milestones done within a half hour from right now, 35 minutes really. So that's very good. And then, of course, there'll be some coast phases and some additional burns over the course of the next day or more. And then the vehicle will arrive at the ISS and it will dock. But as far as this stream goes, we will monitor all of the activities up until T+15 minutes. And once we hear that the crews are safely in orbit, we'll leave it there. But we're just about 20 minutes away from launch. Things are getting exciting, and If anybody has any questions about today's mission or space in general or SpaceX or really anything at all, by all means, please feel free to post those in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer those for you. My name is Andrew. This is Solid Rocket Future, covering the most exciting parts of human spaceflight and rocketry. This is one of the rare occasions that are becoming less rare where we actually get to cover a crewed launch with some people on a rocket. So this is exciting. It's a good day, and we're standing by for this thing to be lit.
Between Dragon and the station hatches, and we expect it to be a little under 2 hours from docking to hatch open, and then we'll welcome the AX-1 crew on board the space station. So a lot to come with that 20.5-hour journey, but all that's going to start with a launch. So I'll send it back over to Hawthorne as we get into the final phases of the countdown. Back over to you, John.
Right. Well, Dan, as you mentioned, it all starts with the launch. And Kate, it's looking like it's getting pretty busy here. People are excited about seeing a launch, right?
Yeah, we're just now under 20 minutes until liftoff. As you could probably tell by the noise, the crew.
And that's what I'm talking about. We're getting close when this thing starts getting all vapory.
Starting to gather just beyond mission control here in the building, and you might be able to tell by the ambient noise. In addition to the live production noises that you also hear, you know, we are in a rocket factory. But yeah, you can see there the crowd is starting to grow behind the team there at Hawthorne Mission Control.
Looks like they got some new monitors and mission control. Looks good.
Control Center in Florida, where the SpaceX teams are also gathered in firing room 4, and then we have the Mission Control Center here. There's a shot of our firing room 4 there in Florida at Cape Canaveral. You can just barely make out pad 39A there in the distance there through the window. Might be wondering why all the different mission control rooms. The one in Johnson, as Dan was saying, you know, that's really mission control for the International Space Station and those operations. The control room that you see there is for everything leading up to launch. As soon as Falcon 9 lifts off, responsibility and control transfers to Mission Control Center here in Hawthorne. So just a quick explanation for why so many rooms with computers.
Exactly. Yeah, and in addition to all the teams gathering here, we've got teams of our own gathering in Houston at Axiom headquarters. You can see there on your screen Axiom Mission Control with the lovely Axiom family.
Oh, this must be an exciting day for Axiom. I can't even begin to think. So all those crews have been working hard to make this happen. And yeah, we've watched SpaceX launch before. We've seen a Falcon launch before. We've seen a Falcon 9 land. We've seen SpaceX take crew to space before. We've seen crews go to the ISS before. All of this is not new. But this is the first time for Axiom. This is the first time that Axiom is launching their crew, their commercial crew, to the International Space Station on a Falcon 9 rocket. So I can't imagine the energy that those teams are feeling right now. That's something that I would love to experience sometime in my life. Being a part of a team like that, that's sending people to space, absolutely incredible.
Incredible to me is that not only do you have work to do, you know, your science experiments and that kind of stuff, not only do you have to get some sleep,
or you can,
but you also have to exercise, right? Yeah. The exercise time, which can be a couple hours.
Stage 2 LOX load has started.
All right, so good news there. We have begun LOX load, liquid oxygen loading on second stage. So that is currently underway for first and second stage, as well as loading of RP1, which is our fuel on both first and second stages.
Right. Right, and again, you know, some of those things that he talked about, it's all following a timeline, right? And we are listening for those important cues along the way that we're hearing on these nets or on the loops, listening for where are we along in that timeline, so we know exactly where we are in terms for launch as we count down at just T-minus 15 from launch.
Yeah, so I'm looking at my dashboard here. It looks like fuel load on second stage is now complete. So we're beginning that LOX load as we just heard. LOX load and fuel load continues on first stage. Axiom crew continuing to wait, following along with everything happening there with the touchscreen displays there above them, as well as their tablets strapped to their legs.
Right.
Everything continuing to look nominal for liftoff in just about 15 minutes.
And as we approach that liftoff in these final moments of our countdown to launch, Axiom Space founders Cam Gaffarian and Mike Suffredini wanted to take a moment to reflect on this mission.
Well, this moment for me and Michael is a very special moment in a beginning of many beginnings, right? The launch of AX-1 going to International Space Station.
So if you're just joining us, we are T-minus 14 minutes and 50 seconds away from launch of a Falcon 9 rocket. The rocket will be delivering astronauts to orbit in the eventually the International Space Station. This is the first ever entirely commercial mission to the ISS for Axiom Space. Really exciting mission happening today, and it's happening soon. We're just 14 minutes and 30 seconds out. So stand by, and this should be a fun one.
Job of getting themselves ready and planning their research. NASA, of course, we can't do this without NASA's leadership and support. And to each of you in the Axiom Space family, we couldn't have done it without you. We're looking forward to a bright future together.
T-minus 14 minutes.
We got a live view of the crew inside the Dragon capsule. On the right side, we see 3 of the astronauts sitting in their seats waiting for this thing to launch. Of course, there is a 4th astronaut in with them, just not visible on this view. And then what we had on the left is a close-up of what we see at the top of this shot now. So at the top of the rocket, above that last little black portion, we have that white cone. Inside that white cone is the 4 astronauts. That little part is the entire crew capsule. So that's a better shot of it there. We should see some more venting from the vehicle over the next few minutes here, and then right before T-0, we'll see those 2 arms that are kind of grabbing the rocket. We'll see those come apart, and that whole structure will roll back, and T-0 will click in, and we'll see this thing take off.
Ultra cold, well below the boiling point of liquid oxygen. That lets us put as much as we can on the vehicle for performance. And getting it on board the vehicle just before liftoff means it won't warm up, where you start to lose the ability to put liquid oxygen onto the stages, into the tank, in the quantities we want. So it stays nice and cold, it doesn't bleed off, and that gives us the performance we need on Falcon 9. Continuing on, Falcon 9, checkouts of the thrust vector controllers, what we call TVC wiggles, you may hear that term, they're coming up. We're also going to be doing throttle valve checkouts on the Merlin engines. That helps control the power of the engines as we go through flight. For example, you hear a throttle down or throttle up as we prepare for the period of maximum dynamic pressure. As we come up on the 12-minute mark, the range continues to be go. Roadblocks are up, all the hazard areas are clear. Airspace, sea space is good. The weather is go. Beautiful shots you can see here, blue skies. I'm looking forward to some great views from the cameras as we head into space.
That's all really good news. So I was waiting for that range update. So range is good. There's no boats or anything in that danger zone. Weather still looks good. We saw those contrails moving across the sky pretty rapidly earlier. So I did mention upper level winds earlier, but everything is looking good. So I think we're going to see this thing take off here.
And they're ready to go. Final instructions of the crew will come in about a minute and a half at T-10. We'll listen to that. The crew displays will be configured for launch, and that setup will give the crew insight into how the launch is proceeding, and it provides constant updates on vehicle health. The T-5 minutes will be in the terminal count for Dragon. Dragon will transition to internal power, going to its onboard batteries and off of the external ground power. We're going to hear continued callouts on the countdown net as we go from T-10 to 0, and then as we fly after T0 and liftoff, we'll hear callouts as we head into space. And that'll be letting the crew know as they reach each of the milestones. Now, next big event coming up at T-10 minutes is we're going to do launch commit criteria, and final instructions will be going to the crew. One other thing that you will hear is during ascent you may hear 1 Alpha, 1 Bravo, 2 Alpha. These are launch escape states. As the Falcon 9 flies, if a launch escape was required, the crew on board knows where they are passing various points in the countdown, and that would tell Dragon what sequence of events to execute to come off of the Falcon 9.
Right. So as we were saying earlier, not only are we concerned about the weather at the pad, but also up the ascent corridor, up the eastern seaboard, and even up near Ireland and everything, in case that the crew does need to abort and come down.
We confirm they're configured.
Copy MLA, and on behalf of the entire SpaceX team, we're honored to have you aboard Endeavour for its 3rd flight to the International Space Station. Axiom-1 marks a new step in commercial spaceflight and research. We wish you a great mission, good luck, Godspeed, and enjoy the ride.
Thanks for those words, Arthur. I've got a few of my own. I'm going to let my crewmate Eitan say it first, though.
שלום. כמה ימים לפני שאנחנו מציינים את המסע הגדול שלנו לחירות. And a few minutes before launching on this journey, I wish to share with you the words of the Greek poet Constantine Cavafy that well describe the perspective of our marvelous crew. Keep Ithaca always in your mind. Arriving there is what you are destined for, but do not hurry the journey at all. Better if it lasts for years. So you are old by the time you reach the island, wealthy with all you have gained on the way, not expecting Ithaca to make you rich. Ithaca gave you this marvelous journey. בהצלחה X1, בהצלחה רקיע.
Thank you, Eitan. I'm going to continue far less elegantly or eloquently, but as we sit here on the precipice of this new era in human spaceflight, we do so on the shoulders of professionals at SpaceX, NASA, and Axiom.
Some very good words from the crew prior to liftoff here.
The launch team, of course, closeout team, all of the folks in mission control, and of course our training teams. With NASA, boy, it's been tough. You know, the first time was always hard, and there's no playbook. It's all open field running, but with ISS program, commercial LEO development, and flight operations,
Titan has gone mobile.
We've learned a lot, and we'll
Welcome back,
continue
Titan.
to do so. We want to thank Cam and Seth for their vision, but especially all the people at Axiom for putting this mission together with the minor miracles that they performed. All of you, make no mistake, are the men and the women in the arena. Your faces are marred, if metaphorically, by the best sweat and blood, and you strive valiantly. You will have no place with the cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. The crew of the great ship Endeavour is ready to sail her proudly, Arthur.
Man, I get the chills listening to this crew, or any crew, try to, state their quotes or speak about what they're about to experience under all of the anticipation of this launch. I think sitting in there 6 minutes before launch and trying to read out a quote or a statement that you had prepared would be so hard to do. But it's such a pleasure, and it's honestly an amazing experience just sitting here listening to them speak about what they're about to experience. It's so cool. So cool.
Just before that call, some really heartfelt words from Commander MLA and Mission Specialist Eitan Stiba. Really love hearing that commentary.
Stage 1, RP load is complete.
All right, stage 1 RP load is complete. So that's one of the final steps prior to takeoff here. We should hear a call out that the vehicle is on internal power soon, a final go ahead from weather and range, and then we'll see that transporter erector open up its arms and retract from the vehicle, and then this thing is off the pad. This thing is it's happening.
Coming up on 5.5 minutes. Kate's let us know that we've got the fuel load complete. Next is coming up. We're T-minus 5 minutes. Dragon will be transitioning configuration for terminal count and going on its internal battery power. Everything continues to look good as we're counting down.
T-minus 5 minutes and 4 seconds.
Dragon is in configure for terminal count.
Falcon 9 tanks are pressing for strongback retracts.
So now that strongback that we talked about earlier that's delivering fuel and power to the vehicle, is those two arms are going to open up now. We should see that any second. We are expecting to see those arms open up here. There they go. And then once those are fully open, we should see that entire structure start to lean back off of the vehicle. T-minus 3 minutes and 40 seconds. That strongback is pulling back now. You can see that structure from the right side pulling away from the vehicle. And a little bit of a sway on the vehicle as well. That is expected. Stage 1 LOX load is complete. So the Dragon has now transitioned from getting power from that umbilical to using the internal batteries to power the countdown and vehicle. Left side is the mission control from Hawthorne, California at SpaceX. Right side is Axiom mission control. So this is, again, the first mission they're launching their crew to the ISS on this Falcon 9. So this is going to be exciting, and I'm really excited to see their reactions here. Let's tune into audio to hear the T-0 countdown.
Loaded with all of its propellant. LOX load on second stage continues. As we mentioned before,
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
Stage 2 LOX load is
complete.
complete.
So there's that call. At this point in time, Falcon 9
Dragon is in auto idle.
Dragon is fully loaded with all of its propellants, nearly 1 million pounds of that propellant.
Next event coming
gas
up
closeout has started.
right
Expect
now.
venting.
The gas closeouts. We finished pressurizing the storage tanks on board the Falcon 9. They gave the crew the heads up, and they hear some loud venting noises. We're also going to vent down the liquid oxygen line that carried the LOX up to the second stage. Generates a typical large white cloud of condensation around the strongback. Big event coming up now, T-minus 1 minute. All the flight computers take over. Let's listen in to the last minute of terminal count.
All right, let's go SpaceX. Let's go Axiom.
FTS is armed. Falcon 9 is in startup and now controlling.
Dragon is in countdown.
Dragon, SpaceX, go for launch.
SpaceX Endeavour, we acknowledge, go for launch.
30 seconds.
T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 15 seconds.
10.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Stop. Go Falcon.
All right,
go
this thing's
Dragon.
going.
Godspeed. Axiom-1.
See that green?
Together, a new chapter begins. Godspeed AX-1.
Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
Everything looking good so far. Other than the SpaceX camera. SpaceX camera doesn't look as good this launch, but maybe it's just because they were zoomed so far out.
T plus 38 seconds into this historic mission, flying crew on board Dragon and Falcon 9.
All right, telemetry nominal.
Some great shots from the side of the Falcon 9 rocket.
Stage 1 throttle down.
Throttling down in the preparation for max dynamic pressure.
We don't have any really audio from launch, which seems to be a trend with SpaceX launches recently. The vehicle is now supersonic. I really miss the engine noises from these streams. Approaching 1,500 kilometers per hour pretty shortly here through max Q. The vehicle is now pitching for its orbital insertion. Everything is looking good so far. Approaching 2,500 kilometers per hour at an altitude of 26 kilometers. In just a few seconds here, we'll see MECO, or a main engine cutoff. So we'll see these main engines from the first stage shut down, and then very quickly after, stage 1 and stage 2 will separate. So we'll see two different pieces of the vehicle, and that first stage will start making its maneuvers to come back and land onto that drone ship. We should see all that happening live on this stream. Shortly after that, that second stage engine will ignite. Main engine cutoff coming up in 10 seconds here. Okay, those engines will be shutting off here in the next 5 seconds or so. There is main engine cutoff. Wait for stage 2 separation. There it is. And stage 2 ignition should be happening any second. There's a good looking stage 2 ignition. Those grid fins on the left-hand side are deploying to bring that first stage back down to land on that drone ship. And we'll bring in some SpaceX audio because we should hear some cheers and applause when that lands on a short fall of gravitas.
On the second stage. We should be hearing call-outs coming up to the crew here shortly on how the trajectory is looking.
So we're at T plus 3 minutes.
SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
Trajectory is looking good. By T plus 15, we should have indication that all of the tasks had gone successfully today. Of course, after that, they'll continue to do some burns and make their way over to the ISS. But T plus 15 is really the indication that its orbital insertion was good. So not too much longer here.
To get the crew into orbit. So Kate, 4.5 minutes in, everything continues to look good.
We got a
What
live
a
view from the crew right there.
Absolutely picture perfect liftoff. We got a live view of the crew inside Dragon Endeavour. Looks like everyone is still pretty comfy. As John had said earlier, we got
Dragon,
to a...
SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
All right, good call out there that trajectory is nominal.
Endeavour, we copy.
As John mentioned, we got to about 3.5 Gs there.
Acquisition of signal, New Hampshire.
Vehicle continues to go up the eastern seaboard. Just acquired signal with the New Hampshire tracking station.
Back down to Earth. It's targeting a landing on our drone ship, a shortfall of Gravitas, which is parked a couple hundred miles off the coast of Florida.
There's some ice or something floating off the left-hand side of the first stage.
Inside, everything continues to be nominal there, as the MVAC engine is powering the second stage and Dragon Endeavour to its targeted drop-off orbit. Absolutely beautiful views of both the first and second
Dragon,
stages.
SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
All right, we got the green lambda going now.
SpaceX Endeavour, we copy.
All right, so coming up in about a minute and a half, the first stage will execute the first of 2 burns required for today's landing attempt. At about T plus 7 minutes and 30 seconds, we'll see the entry burn begin. That's where the first stage will ignite the center engine first, and then a couple seconds later, ignite 2 more engines, so a total of 3 engine burn, which will last about 29 seconds. The entry burn slows the vehicle down significantly as it re-enters back into the Earth's atmosphere.
So in just about 2 minutes, we'll
The first
literally
stage
see this
sees high drag,
rocket
which
on the
scrubs roughly
left-hand side
70%
land on
of
a
that
drone
velocity
ship
by the
in
time
middle of
that the
ocean.
landing burn begins.
Oh, sorry, I thought I had the stream muted for that. So yeah, literally in just like 2 minutes, we'll see that rocket on the left-hand side land on a drone ship in the middle of the ocean. We saw a shot of the drone ship earlier, and the ocean was looking pretty rough. So it should be a fun landing to see.
Thrusters, so that's the puff of gas that you see there occasionally. That's used for attitude control systems. We also utilize those grid fins that you see. There are 4 of them placed around the booster. And those grid fins also help steer for a precise landing, either at
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
Stage 2 flight
All right,
termination.
there we
Step
can
is safe.
see that entry burn has begun. We are targeting a landing on our drone ship, a shortfall of Gravitas today. Everything continuing to look nominal with trajectory and MVAC performance there for our second stage on the right-hand side.
Now, especially on crewed missions, I do like to remind people that whatever we see on the left-hand side with this first stage booster is irrelevant from the crew's orbital insertion and their safety. So in the event that we see the landing on the left-hand side not go according to plan, which I don't expect, but that is okay. That puts the crew in no danger. The crew is off in orbit now. The first stage is coming back to land. So hopefully, we've seen SpaceX nail this landing so many times, but just because it's a crewed mission, it's important to note that what happens to that first stage booster, it doesn't affect the crew at this point. So very good.
That's where we shut down the MVAC engine, or second engine cutoff.
Shannon.
Copy, Shannon.
Stage 1 transonic.
We should see that stage 1 booster landing on this ship in the middle of the ocean here in just about a minute.
Note that our landing
Or less.
burn and second engine cutoff will occur about the same time.
shut down.
Crew looking good on the
All right,
right-hand
you got a live
side.
view of the crew inside Dragon Endeavour there on the right-hand side of your screen.
Stage 1 landing burn.
Stage 1 blowing through the clouds. What an amazing
Landing burn
shot
has
that
begun
was.
for the first stage.
Dragon, SpaceX, nominal orbit insertion.
All right, great news there.
There's
Dragon
the drone
Endeavour,
ship. There it is.
nominal orbit insertion.
Look at those grid fins
SpaceX
doing their
Endeavour,
job.
we copy, and it's great to be here. 0G, and we feel fine.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy. SpaceX Dragon launch skip system disarmed.
As you can see, this Falcon 9 has landed for the 5th time. All the while.
Just before the first stage landing, we did hear the crew is now in 0G.
Confirm the landing. Confirmed landing there of the first stage booster. Also, almost simultaneously, great news for the second stage. We heard that there was nominal orbit insertion for Crew Dragon Endeavour. There you can see a live view inside our Dragon. Looks like
Crew's
the crew
looking good.
is beginning to adjust.
They got their 0G indicator on the right-hand side. It looks like a little dog.
G indicator.
That was one of mine. That was one of the things I really wanted to see what they were going to bring for their 0G indicator, so I can't wait to see what.
John says, wow, perfect footage the whole time. Yeah, that footage coming back from the first stage as it blew through the clouds, I don't think we've seen footage like that. That was amazing. Andrew, a.k.a. Titan, says, landed. Nailed it. Hell yeah.
Again, starting to really getting their first taste of microgravity.
Yeah.
Oh, it has ears? Oh, it's a bunny. Is that
like
Thumper?
bunny. I think it might be.
I think that's Thumper from Bambi. Love it. So right now, the second stage is basically preparing for Dragon separation. The next step now.
So about 5 minutes left until all of the major events of the stream will have completed. So we'll see the Dragon deploy here in the next few minutes. And we'll see the hatch, not the hatch, but we'll see that top cover open. And that will be everything. But stick with us for another 4 or 5 minutes here. And we'll see how everything's going. So far, so good.
Right now, the second stage is about 200 kilometers above Earth. Preparing now for stage separation. Excuse me, for Dragon separation. For those of you that have just recently joined us, we had an on-time liftoff of the Axiom-1 crew. They are now in.
This is a great camera shot, actually. We should see this Dragon separation from this shot here in 10 or 15 seconds.
The International Space Station.
5 seconds.
The view that you're currently looking at is inside the Dragon trunk, which, as you can see, has just separated from the second stage.
Dragon separation confirmed.
So the Dragon capsule is now completely separated from the second stage. It is happy and healthy in orbit. The crew is doing good.
Do some great research for us. We'll look to see you back here underground.
We've got some loud audio.
And
some great
MLA
comments from the
and the rest of the crew Endeavor. Glad we got to have some fun this morning. We'll probably be calling it an early weekend over here at the Cape. Pass you over to Anna and the team. You'll be in good hands. Godspeed, Endeavor. Enjoy the rest of your flight. Cheers.
Hey, Mark, it was a lot of fun. I venture to guess we had a little bit more than you did. We thank you and your launch team, Girth, you and the Falcon 9 team. That was a hell of a ride, and we're looking forward to the next 10 days.
That's right, Titan. Endeavor is free.
All right. So.
Thanks for the comments, Andrew. Thank you so much for joining us today, Andrew, as well. Had a great time chatting.
Our first Quindar tone of the mission.
Yeah. I queued up.
We'll stay with stream here for another 2 minutes. I'll do my sign-offs here in a couple minutes, but I think we have one more event here.
On its way to the International Space Station, it has separated. There's a view
Dragon
inside.
SpaceX, we had nominal dehumidifier activation and service section Draco checkouts.
There we can see over the shoulder of
SpaceX Endeavor, we copy, okay.
Over the shoulder, previously Commander MLA was on the left and pilot Larry Connor was on the right. Live view inside the cabin. They just got the okay to lift their visors.
All right. Nice. Visors have been lifted. Everybody's looking good.
All right. so we can see that everyone is in space.
Yeah.
We can see that zero-G indicator floating around. Great view there of Dragon Endeavour, now in space with the Axiom-1 crew on their way to the International Space Station.
Yeah, I mean, this is a day of firsts. You know, this is my first time getting to participate in a launch like this. This is a first for Axiom. I mean, this is a first for spaceflight. And it's just wonderful to see such a picture of perfect launch.
It really was.
We saw the landing and we saw orbital or zero-G insertion at the same time. I mean, that was perfect.
Yeah.
It was wonderful to see. All right, well, as I just said, today's launch is one for the history books. So to punctuate this milestone that NASA and commercial companies are able to achieve together, we go now to Kennedy Space Center, where Megan Cruz is with NASA's Kathy Leaders.
I'm here right now with the Associate Administrator of NASA's Space Operations Mission Director. It's so great to have you here, Kathy. What did you think of the launch?
Oh my gosh, it's always like, you know, right in the bottom of my throat. I'm holding, can't breathe.
Yes.
But what a beautiful, beautiful sight.
Yeah.
So good to see it. I want to tell everybody working Artemis 1 wet dress, we're off the range. We're off the range for Axiom-1 and we can get moving, but
great point by Kathy. So Artemis 1 wet dress rehearsal does have to resume in the next few days. So it's good that Axiom launched today and is not going to be a conflict for trying to compete for range and everything for wet dress rehearsal.
Yeah. What does Axiom-1 represent? Axiom-1 and also future private astronaut missions
so
in the air.
Here we are. This is a good interview to listen to. So I'll leave you here, and you can tune in to the SpaceX stream or the NASA stream or the Axiom stream to listen to the rest of this interview. But we saw the launch today. We saw the coverage. Of course, the teams or the capsule has to make its way out to the ISS over the course of the next 20 hours or so. And keep an eye out for updates on Twitter for all those events as well. So that's kind of it for my coverage here today. Great time today. As always, had a great time talking to Andrew, aka Titan. We love having him on the stream here, and he's great to talk to. He really is. So thank you so much for coming on the stream earlier, Andrew. My name is also Andrew from Solid Rocket Future, covering the most exciting parts of human spaceflight and rocketry. Today is one of the rare events that we actually get to say human spaceflight and mean it. We saw some crew launch to the ISS today, and it was a beautiful, perfect launch. Next big event that we will be covering will likely be Crew 4, which is currently scheduled for towards the end of the month. So we'll see where the schedule brings that, if it stays on time or not. YouTube is where to catch all of the big, exciting events. If you want to subscribe or sign up for notifications on the YouTube, you will only get notified for our big streams. But if you just can't get enough launch coverage and you want to see some coverage of the smaller launches like Starlink or NROL missions and stuff like that, we do some additional coverage over on our Twitch channel as well. So if you need any of that information, just go to rocketfuture.org. That's rocketfuture.org. You can find links to our Twitter, where we post updates, our Twitch, where we have those other Hangout launch streams. But like I said, this is the place for all the big stuff. So if you're following along here, you're in the right place to be notified of any of the big stuff. I very, very much appreciate anybody that came and talked and chatted or just hung out and watched in the background. And Maria O'Farrell, thank you so much for all the comments, and thanks for supporting us. That's kind of it. Big changes for me coming up in the next couple weeks. I'll be moving down to Starbase, Texas, to do additional coverage down of what SpaceX is doing down in Starbase. I'll have a brand new studio for our stream, so we'll be doing launch coverage from there and everything as well. So thank you very much. Check out rocketfuture.org. Couldn't say thank you enough. Thank you. Talk to you soon.